Check. Bling blow. Start streaming, that's the one. Alright, and then let's do this. Chat. Pop out. Up that the spaceship. Looking like we made it. Trap star, lifestyle. Bang. And then when we want to share, we go window capture, properties, Zoom meeting. Nope, not that one. Zoom workplace. And then we do new meeting, start with video. Now what I could do, select microphone, speaker, yeah. General webcam. What I could do is do no video. What I could do, I did this last time. Where I shared my OBS. That's pretty genius. Okay. So we do the Zoom meeting. Zoom workplace. Screen share. And then what I need is show meeting. There we go. Copy invite link. Let me do WhatsApp. Okay, and then we send it to Zoe on here. So if I do screen sharing controls, you're sharing screen. Okay. There can be a way for me just to share. I don't know. How did I do it last time? I was super smart. Hello.
Hello there, how are you?
I'm good. This is going to be a little bit complicated. One second, my mic's too loud. So I can't, because I'm streaming and I'm really stupid. I don't know how to share my camera on two things. So
I mean, like, that doesn't make you stupid. That would be beyond most people, I reckon.
So can you see me like in a screen share?
Yeah.
Is that all right? Is that like good enough?
Oh, that's fine. I can. You're a bit small, but that's fine. I can get the idea. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Okay, let me see if maybe there's a way of making just. So I'm just in that top corner. All right, now I need to figure out how to get you on my screen. Zoom meeting. There we go. So that's you there. So you're going to be kind of seeing yourself. I don't know if that's going to be really annoying for you.
I do these interviews all the time, and I am used to my own stupid face. I just ignore myself.
I know some people just find it a bit self-conscious if they're like staring at themselves. So
I'll try to focus on you. It's all right.
Okay. Cool. Hello. I'm gonna what I'll do. I'll mute our call for probably 5 minutes. I'll like start the stream and introduce you and stuff, and then it'll be pretty obvious. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fine.
Cool. All right. Give me 2 seconds. Alrighty. So if I mute this, God, the technical difficulties. I'm fucking doing this stuff. All right. Okay. So no, I can't hear you at the moment. So that's right. And then live. Okay. Edit. Should probably like share this link somewhere. All right. Public. There we go. Bang. Okay. So I'll just give it a couple minutes. Let some people get in. And then, if I share this, share link, bang it on Twitter. I'm live with Zoe. Zoe. Zoe Gardner. Can't join. Sick. That should be right. Is that right? That doesn't look right. I'm sure it's fucking fine. There we go. Alright, cool. People, hello. How the hello kitty are we? How we doing? We got people. Sigma. The Sigmas have arrived. A up me duck. How the hell are we? We'll let some people roll in, and then we will start yapping about immigration and all that stuff that everyone loves to endlessly talk about. The only thing we're allowed to talk about in politics. Can't talk about anything else. Wow, my mic is going insane. There we go. Not allowed to talk about anything else. Only immigration. It's the only topic we're allowed to talk about is immigration. So we will milk this until you want to talk about, I don't know, it'll be maybe the trans next. Maybe we'll give them a go next time. How are we? How are we all? Regardless of where they come from, we're overpopulated. God, the hot takes are coming in already. What's happening, dudes? Morning, folks. Hey, Jimmy, how hard do you think it is to have a conversation without being courted by racists? Very hard. You can't do anything without being courted by racists. You talk about literally anything, and you'll have someone go, yeah, that's why white people are better. You can't do anything. So we're going to try, we're always criticised on the left for not talking about immigration properly, which is insane. We talk about it. You guys don't, not you guys, but just like the general world doesn't want to listen. They want to just sort of bastardise our opinion. So yeah, we're going to have a really good tour. I thought, you know what? I'm just some bruh with a webcam who makes YouTube videos. I don't really know all that much about a lot of stuff. I want to learn. That's what we're here to do. We're learning. So, you know what? So in the podcast space, when they have a topic, they go, oh, I'm really interested about immigration. I'm really interested about trans people. Who do I talk to? I'm going to talk to the one random fucking guy who wrote a book about why the trans are trying to destroy the planet, or why immigration is trying to poison the blood well of this nation. I'll talk to that guy. I won't talk to the experts. I won't talk to people who study these things, that make it their job to properly look into these things. I'll just talk to the contrarian. So we're actually going to talk to a real life, in the flesh, academic, like a researcher, like a person whose job it is to actually understand immigration, to understand what's really going on, and I honestly feel like Zoe, so her name is Zoe Gardner, and Zoe has made some of the best, in my opinion, the best content around immigration. And it's you watch it, and all of these things that you get fed about immigration, you realize so many of these opinions just come from a completely dishonest place, really devoid of any nuance. So Zoe's really opened my eyes to a lot of things, especially around refugee crisis and the handling of refugees in this country. I did the whole video about, basically, I touched on the refugee bit and I did a lot on it, and I used Zoe's information for that because it's so good. So we're going to be talking to Zoe. Toasty Android, thank you for the donut. Hey, Jimmy, I just shorted Tesla, so I have £2 a gain, and you've given it me. Thank you so much. €2. So yeah, I'm really delighted to speak to Zoe. I've been a big fan. She does amazing work. She goes a lot on TV panels and all this sort of stuff, just actually giving it to these people who really just don't want to listen, but she does a really good job at not compromising and just being honest. And yeah, so let me switch the camera. That. There we go. We see her face cam. We hear her voice. I've probably muted her. There we go. Hello.
Hi there.
How are we doing?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good. I'm excited to chat to you. I was just saying I've been quite a fan. I probably come across your stuff maybe 8 months ago, sort of thing. I'd been sort of slowly watching it. I actually saw when you started to do YouTube more, and I was quite into that because I would always see you in short form typically, and you're really good in long form. So yeah, maybe you could tell us a bit about yourself, what you've been doing, and your work and your credentials.
My credentials for being here. Yeah, thanks a lot. So my name is Zoe Gardner, and I am a campaigner for the rights of all migrants and refugees. And I've worked on this my whole life. So I've always worked for small charities that support migrants going through different parts of the immigration system and the asylum system here in the UK. And I think one of the problems that I saw when I was working in these small charities is that like all of their resource goes towards service provisions, like supporting people, getting people legal advice, getting people shelter, all of this stuff. And there's not a lot of resource for the advocacy side. And obviously, things are going pretty badly on that front. So I started speaking up more and more and more. And I've kind of made myself unemployable by a charity at this point because I speak up very politically and charities can't get political. So I've sort of set myself up now as a freelancer and I do bits and pieces of work, bits and pieces of research, um, uh, and campaigning. And I still work in this area, but I do it just as a loudmouth on the internet talking about the fact that, migrants' rights are very important.
So you got into like when did you start even talking about this sort of stuff or start your career or anything like that? When
Yeah, so I started out right like I said, it's all I've ever done. So when I was at uni, I got into politics because of the student demonstrations against the rising fees for students, and I got interested in politics there. And then I took a master's in politics, and I had a class where I had a professor who talked to us about migration and how we manage it in Europe, and specifically the asylum system in Europe. And I was like, oh, ding, right, this is the thing. This is the worst thing we do. Of all the terrible things we do, the worst way we treat people is this. And so I just went out that day and found a campus group that was I could volunteer with that was doing volunteer English language lessons for refugees. And then I went out of my master's and got a job at the European Council on Refugees and Exiles, which is based in Brussels. It's a like pan-European organization. And then I came back here. I worked at the Race Equality Foundation here. Then I worked at Asylum Aid. Then I worked at the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants. Then I worked for the European Network on Statelessness. So basically, I've only done this. I've
yeah,
worked for a bunch of places for
when did
longer
you
than I care
when
to
so like
imagine.
what year would it have been when you started? Is my mic okay? Everyone in the chat saying my mic's bad. What year did you start?
So I guess I graduated from my master's in 2013.
Okay, so it
Yeah,
was
yeah. So
actually
I was already doing it.
before the migrant crisis and
That
before
was a
this.
really interesting point because before then, when I told people what I did and that I worked with refugees, everyone was like, "Oh yeah, cool, okay," move on. And then I saw this big change in 2015 where
That's
everyone
so
was like, "Oh, really? That's so interesting," you know?
yeah. So okay, so it was 2013. I'm trying to think like politically what even the conversation. Oh, my mic is crazy. At the moment. There we go. I think that's better. What like the conversation in 2013 would have been back then? Was it even? It was a topic a little bit because
It was David Cameron talking about like the tens of thousands pledge, and it was Theresa May in the Home Office doing the go home vans. Do you remember that?
no.
Oh yeah. She got a bunch of vans with the words go home on them and drove them around highly diverse parts of the country.
What the fuck?
Yeah. It was good
Theresa
times
May.
even back then, eh? Yeah, Theresa May as
You know
Home
what's so
Secretary.
funny is like when they say like, we've not been allowed to talk about this. This has been so taboo. And you're saying that in 2013 they were driving trucks around with go home.
Yeah,
It's such a
yeah.
gaslighting. It's a constant gaslighting that it's like this suppressed voice is this anti-migrant. It's the suppressed voice. And yet all I remember growing up was constantly like the sun and seeing stuff about like, Islam is doing this, the Poles are doing this. And it's like this constant gaslighting to make themselves believe that they're like this suppressed voice, this victim.
Yeah, it's I don't know where it comes from, but I've had this like literally this morning, someone commenting on one of my videos being like going back to the Brexit referendum and saying, well, the problem with that referendum was we weren't allowed to talk about migration. I'm like, the entire referendum was about migration. What are you talking about?
Yeah. I would genuinely like to me it's you can't talk about anything else. That's the truth is like I honestly any topic they always find this is the thing because it's kind of like actually I'll ask you where do you kind of stand like politically so migration and refugee is obviously its own thing. Where do you stand on say like economics and capitalism like the roles of that?
So I'm very left wing, and I don't think you have to be very left wing to support rights for refugees, certainly. And
Agreed.
also there is a right wing argument, like pro high migration argument. But that's why I like to make a difference between being pro just migration and
Yeah.
being pro the rights of migrants and making sure that everybody in this country has equal rights, especially in the workplace. So I definitely come at this from a position of being very left wing. And I think like, yeah, we're obviously talking about migrants so much because we don't want like the owners of the newspapers and of the media don't want us talking about wealth taxes
Mm.
and who's been getting richer and who's been getting more powerful and who's consolidating their power over the last few years. And it isn't migrants.
Yeah. And that's the thing I always hear. It's so manipulative, but these kind of faux left wing takes on migration, like they start talking about the suppression of wages, and maybe we can ask you more openly about these sort of things. But they'll
Yeah.
use terms like the suppression of labor. I'm like, you're using Marxist language, and I know that you've never spent 2 seconds talking about automation, union crushing, none of that. Which if there's a suppression of wage, obviously that's it. But they do this sort of thing where they try and just find, it's like a salesman who's trying to find what are the little things that make you tick. Oh, you're a bit left leaning. Okay, well, I'll talk about the suppression of wages. So
Yeah.
can we start with that actually? Like,
Yeah. That's a
where?
really good place to
Yeah,
start.
yeah. So suppression of wages, is there like truth to it? Is it overstated? What's like the reality with that?
Well, so in terms of like, first of all, what the studies tell us, like what is actually happening is that no, it doesn't suppress wages. It has a pretty much neutral effect on wages. But there's more complexity to it than that because essentially, yeah, the fallacy is that if there's just more workers available, then bosses can reduce wages, and if there's a scarcity of labor, then you can bargain for higher wages. That's true, but you have to have unions, you have to have organized workforce, you have to have protections for minimum standards and wages. And crucially, you all have to have the same bargaining level, right? Because if there is a group of people in the country who have fewer rights, then that group of people can be paid less. And it undermines the entire perspective
Ah,
of like bargaining for better wages. So the argument is, oh, migrants will work for less. No, that's not true. That's not true. Migrants will be paid less because we restrict migrants' rights. And want to explain this because I think it kind of comes to the crux of this. People who talk about we want less migration, they're not actually going to bring us less migration. Brexit is the perfect example, right? We have huge labor needs in this country. We have huge labor shortages and wages aren't going up. And the reason for that is that we have bad structures and weak unions to enforce workers' rights. What they're doing when they say they want to reduce migration is actually they're reducing migrants' rights. So Keir Starmer did this just the other week, his Island of Strangers speech. He said, we need less immigration. And he didn't say, I'm going to issue fewer visas. He can't say that because he needs the workers. So he said, I'm going to reduce the rights of migrants. I'm going to say that they have to be here for a longer period of time before they can become a citizen and they can have equal rights to the rest of us. So when you're on a temporary status as a migrant, before you become a citizen, you are very often tied to your employer through your visa. So
mm,
most migrants who come here to work, their right to be in this country depends on their boss. So if your boss knew that you couldn't leave your job without also leaving your life in this country, then what do you think they'd do to your wages?
oh my
Obviously, they
God.
would they would not raise your wages. So suppressing the rights of migrants does suppress wages.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I've not heard it. I've not heard it explained like that. Because yeah. So like the irony is they're using this argument that has a grain of truth, but not probably for the reason they think it does, to
Yeah.
argue for conditions that would worsen and make that problem more the case.
And as you say, they always stop there, don't they? They always talk about migrants. They don't talk about empowering unions. They don't talk about raising the minimum wage. They don't talk about redistribution. They don't talk about how to fund public services better. They stop at say, blame the brown person, blame the foreigner, and then we don't have to go into the whole conversation about all the structural issues that keep wages down. You look at the care sector, we've had a lot of migrants come into work in the care sector and wages are low. So people can say, oh, that's why. But that's not why. And the proof is we still have 130,000 vacancies in the care sector right now. So we have, even with the immigration, a scarcity of labor. That should have pushed up wages, right?
Yeah.
But by the argument that if we restrict immigration, wages will go up, the fact that there is huge vacancies and a huge need for more labor should have pushed up wages, but it hasn't. Why? Because these structures around how we run care homes in the UK does not allow that to happen. It does not allow for collective bargaining. It does not like the funding comes from central government through local government and is just not set at a high enough rate. And it is not a valued profession. And these things are actually what is keeping down wages, not the fact that it's somebody born elsewhere who's doing the job.
Yes, yeah, I sort of, yeah, I'm really, that's very good information because it's like I often hear that one, and
Yeah.
my response has typically, to be honest, been to, I tend to make the argument that like when I've seen that research, it's always been something along the lines of like it's 1p per hour. I think this is what I heard, and that's like a very generous to say that that's the case. And then I would often iterate that immigrants aren't like zero sum to the economy. So where I don't believe all forms of like I guess wealth creation etc isn't equal. So if or wealth distribution isn't equal. So if you give a billionaire who doesn't live here, who pays taxes not here or doesn't pay taxes here, and you give them the distribution of money, that money is not going to filter anywhere near you. You'll just get some shit jobs and blah 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 from it. But immigrants, to me, this is like the economic argument why I like immigration, is that typically they tend to, well, they're another customer. I always say an immigrant comes to the country, they need their haircut, they need their car fixed, they need this. They're
Yeah.
another customer in the market. So they expand the thing. So I tend to make that argument. But the fact that to even say what you're saying, which is actually what the real core problem is that they want to use immigration to lower workers' standards. That's a very compelling argument, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and you saw it with Brexit, right? Because what happened after Brexit and how we didn't see less, say, farm workers, migrant farm workers, right? Like farm work is a job that overwhelmingly is done by migrants in the UK, right? Previously to Brexit, it was done by Eastern Europeans overwhelmingly, and now it's done by people from countries like the Central Asian countries largely, right? And the difference in like the numbers, like I say, didn't go down because guess what? Still need to pick the fruit, still need to work the farms, right? But the difference is that people who come now to work in those places, they don't have freedom of movement. And freedom of movement was, I always argued, a worker's right. It was a worker's right because it meant that when you came to work here, you were free to leave your employer if they abused you. You were free to go find work somewhere else. You were free to find work that paid you better. You were free to organize yourself among fellow workers. You were free to live with your family, to settle here, to build a future and a life. Like all of these fundamental rights. Workers who come now, same amount of workers coming, actually a few more, but they are on a super restrictive visa that ties them to work just for that one farm, to come and go after 6 months and have to come back again, wait another 6 months outside the country before they can come back again. They have to live on site in a caravan on the farms. And what we have, and there's tons of like stories of this, and it's really heart-rending, people having their wages withheld from them, a huge amount of sexual harassment of the female workers on these farms. And what can they do? They're in a situation where they cannot complain about it because they've got into debt to come here. They have to work crazy hours and then they're going to have to leave again because those are the terms of their visa. They can't change job. So what Brexit didn't reduce migration. It reduced the rights of workers who come here. And obviously that has an impact on workers across the economy.
That's so interesting. Do you think, could you see a potential in the future that people are going to, out of choice, stop coming to Britain? Because I always think this whenever I see all this stuff happening. I'm just like, why do they want it? Like, I'm really cool with them coming here. I'm just like, why would you kind of want to come here right now? Like, it's kind of surprising to me that you'd want to come here.
Yeah, I think there's lots of different kinds of migrants, right? So what we're doing at the moment with restricting rights to gain citizenship and to settle down and making that harder and more expensive. And we have, by the way, the like most expensive immigration system in the world. If you want to come here,
Yeah.
the visa fees you have to pay are higher than anywhere else in the world. So if you're somebody who's highly qualified, who's maybe going to do master's research at university, or like you're going to go and work in like specialized healthcare or any of these highly paid roles, you could fulfill the criteria to go to Canada, to Germany, to the US, to the UK, to Australia. And the more we make it difficult and and restrict the rights of people who come here, the less they're going to choose to come here. However, there's a whole lot of other migrants for whom coming here, even under very difficult circumstances, represents the chance for a future, the chance for opportunity for their kids that they will have never had. So even working very hard for very low pay in a country like the UK, where there is stability, where there's the chance to build, where there's the chance that your kids could have a
Yeah.
life you otherwise couldn't have, those people will still come. So we're just changing the demographic of the types of people who will choose to come here, essentially, rather
Yeah.
than
I
the
think
UK is a long way off from not being. I know it feels like crazy
yeah,
to
and
us,
to be honest, I
but
think I'm talking very from like a privilege. Like I have access to the ability to leave, so I'm looking at the world with lots of options. And my wife always tells me she's Ukrainian, and she always pulls me on like Jimmy, you're looking at the world from a very like British lens that I could, if I want to, I could go to somewhere that offers me much more. But from like an immigrant's perspective, they're trying to look at the world like, where can I go? Can I go to France? I don't know French. I know someone that
Mhm.
lives in Britain, so maybe we could go work
Exactly.
there. There's a job there. I speak a bit of English. Like I'm looking at
Exactly.
it in a very, I could get Duolingo. That's how my brain works. Oh, I'll get Duolingo. I'll learn Spanish. Like it's not like that for most people. It's not quite as easy. So
Yeah.
it's having more empathy to understand um, that people don't have as much autonomy as someone like myself.
Yeah. I think if you, I mean, absolutely, you look at like the difference between the passport you've got and the passport that a Syrian person's got. Right? Like your passport lets you into about 150 countries with no visa, right? You can just walk in
Yeah.
at the gate. Syrians, there are 6 countries that will let you do that. And none of the rich and stable countries are on that list. So the difference in opportunity that you have to move is just, it's incomparable, right? We essentially, I mean, if you're really rich, you already have open borders, right? And that's why I think, again, it has to come back for me to an argument based on rights. Because if you're rich enough, you can purchase whatever rights you want. And then rights, like,
Mm,
these rules that protect our rights, they're for the people who can't buy them.
yeah, yeah, that's the thing. I always think race and stuff it's so tied deeply to class, but it becomes a very useful tool to like distract people because what you're looking at is really massive class imbalances, but we sort of because of yeah, I guess the media trying to put it on culture and race and stuff like that, it breaks that understanding. But at the end of the day, it's a power hierarchy there, and they just have
Exactly.
way less rights and accessibility. Yeah, it's very true. I wanted to ask you so. Like one of the key questions we get all the time is like about assimilation. So like the typical thing you'll hear is obviously like I'm okay with migrants. Again, this is kind of a class thing. They're sort of talking. I'm okay with wealthy migrants, but I'm not okay with like poor migrant. They won't say that. I'm not okay with migrants from cultures I really don't understand. And
Yeah.
I'm from like near Luton, so Bury Park is notorious place because of like uh, Tommy Robinson and like there was sort of terrorist groups and stuff that popped up there. It was a big sort of battleground. But I used to work in Bury Park, and I used to go there, and I like didn't hate it. Like I thought it was quite a nice place. But I can understand when I first went there because you are like naturally we're all just humans and there is like tribalism in us. And I do think when I first went there, I was like, oh God, I'm a bit out of place. I feel a bit out of place. And for some people, that's an alienating feeling to be in your country and to feel and in any place sort of alien. Um, I did this thing with a guy called Taj. You probably know him, Taj Ali. We
Yeah.
went to Bury Park and we walked around and we talked about all these things, and we were sort of talking about assimilation and the story of how and why the Muslim community became a little bit more like they're very integrated. So what I want to ask you is two things. So can you sort of expose how actually very well integrated they are into society, firstly, but then secondly, the understanding as to why there are pockets of places that are predominantly Muslim. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, I think you're right to say that, like, for the most part, Muslims are very, very integrated in the UK. We have Muslims that have been British for generations and generations, like far more British families than my family, for example, which is a sort of European cocktail. Um, like, my friends who are Muslim, whose families are just British and their parents are British and their grandparents are, and fully sort of yeah, as integrated as anyone else. I think the other thing is time. right? So when we talk about integration and we talk about assimilation, I think time is a really key factor. And I've been looking a lot recently about the period of around like the turn into the 1900s and how there was a big wave at that time into the UK of mainly Jewish. Essentially, we'd call them refugees now, like immigrants who were destitute. They were escaping from pogroms across Eastern Europe and Russia, and they came to the UK with absolutely nothing. And it's fascinating when you read about the political debate at that time because it's exactly the
Yeah.
same. And they're talking about how, like, you walk through streets and you don't hear English, and you see how, like, they're dirty and their women, are kept in bad circumstances, and blah, blah, blah. And over 100 years later, obviously, we look at that and like we say, well, it wasn't because they were Jewish. It wasn't because they were foreign. It was because they were poor. They'd come
Mm-hmm.
from elsewhere and they were grouped in what were effectively slums in East London mainly. Um, and yeah, of course, in the beginning, they didn't all speak English, and some of them were more tied to, traditions from their other countries. But then their influence on Britain was very, very strong as well. So what was seen as like their foreign foods that, are now considered part of like staple things in our diet, right? And their kids and their grandkids spoke English, went to English schools. Um, and over time, like they have become, like you think about, there are obviously there and there is a huge problem of anti-Semitism, right? So I don't want to like play that down, but at the same time, like you think of like mainstream ordinary society does not view Jewish people as foreign or other, or as an invasion or as any of these things. But they were absolutely seen like that then. And there were people then who were far less integrated than others, right? And who didn't speak the language as well, and so on. And over time, that changes. So I think if you look at the UK as a whole, we're a really huge success story in terms of integration, and we had to be because we colonized half the world. So it had to be that way. But you look at like educational outcomes, you look at like career outcomes, and so on. Families from India, families from Pakistan, families, over time, people just become this
Yeah.
like part of each other, right? But in the beginning, and because in more recent times, the wave of immigration that we're seeing is like, if you want to separate out in one group, you do see Muslims and you see people from the Arab world as well, like who share some language and some cultural, and that is becoming more and more part of our culture. Obviously, we know curry's part of our culture, like these things become part of our mainstream culture, but also they become more and more over generations part of mainstream culture too. And it's just a slow process and it can be very jarring
Yeah. And
in the moment.
it's like, yeah, you have cultural moments that start bringing their culture into. So like I know it sounds really ridiculous to like just point to this, but Chabuddy G from like People Just Do Nothing, like that is a massive cultural moment. And like in the future, we'll look back and that will be quite a defining moment of integration of I don't know, is he Pakistani? I'm not sure exactly the background of
I'm
Tribali
not
G,
sure, yeah.
but it's like that is the integration of a new type of Brit, which is a Pakistani background or whatever the background, merging with sort of British Cockney and taking on the. And we all know him. We've all met that guy, and he's the wheeler dealer kind of thing. That's a new thing,
Yeah.
and it's like that does take time. And also there is sort of different different sort of like story of working conditions that allowed or maybe sped up the process or whatever, to the point that now
Mm.
we consider like black British people, it's just no one really argues against black British people. And that's because when they came over, they were often working on the docks, they were often working in like mixed working class communities. So in the
Yeah.
beginning they had all these problems with the like Jamaicans, and there was all this sort of like we didn't get along with them so well, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually what happens is they're put in the same workforce, they work together, they get to know each other, and then you get you get like ska music, and then you get skinhead music, you get the punks, and you get all this. And unfortunately, that took a darker turn, but that's a whole another story. But in the beginning of that formation was the crossover of culture. And then
Yeah.
like the black British input into our music culture, our food culture is like undeniable.
Yeah.
And it just takes time. And I feel like Chabuddy G is like one of them to really make an abstract
Yeah.
point, but it's like, he's kind of that starting of that story.
No, he is. And I think there's two things actually to say about what you just said. Is one thing is obviously that process is still happening, but it's also like we have less community spaces, especially among working class communities, where people just like third spaces, right? Where people go and mix and like that's what you do is you hang out with the local kids and whatever. Everybody goes down to the same pub, everybody goes to, that we have less of that. We're more isolated, we're more online, we're more in our own homes now. So I think that that does have an impact on slowing that process. And the other thing is that again, like I said, like it's not immigration that lowers wages, it's the repression of the rights of migrants that lowers wages. It's the same with like you talk about politicians who want integration. Our immigration system makes it so much harder. Like we could have a much better approach to integration through our immigration system. What we have at the moment is that it takes years and years and years and years to have a stable footing in this country. Like you are on a temporary visa for, well, now the government's changing it. That was the Island of Strangers speech.
Mm.
It's going to be 10 years now before you even have a permanent status, and then another year for citizenship. And while you're othered in that way, you can't vote, you can't rely on state support, like you can't rely on any kind of benefits. If you lose your job, if you get sick, if someone in your family gets sick, if you need housing support, disability support, child support, any of that, none of that. You don't get any support in terms of like what English language, any of that. That went out ages ago. So we basically have an immigration system that keeps people poorer and having a very different experience to the majority population, right? For a long time. And that obviously is bad for integration. Who'd have thought it?
Mm.
So yeah, it a lot of our policies and a lot of when politicians say, oh, well, there's a problem with integration, so we're going to cut migrants' rights. It's like you are creating more space between those people and mainstream society. That makes the problem worse.
So I want to ask two things when you sort of mentioned there. I don't know which to do first. So let's do this one first. So access to benefits for non-national citizens. So I always say that obviously like the bulk of the story is that if you come over as a worker, you have to pay to use the NHS like $1,000 a year. It's a scam and it costs a shitload of money anyway. But they don't have access to what's it called? There's like a term for it, isn't it? Access to like recourse.
No recourse to
Yeah.
public funds. Yeah, that's it.
So I've seen some people say that we are spending 7 billion. No, I don't think it's 7 billion. Okay, I'll just ask you. So are we spending some money on non-national people in Britain that are not British citizens but are migrants, but they are getting some state support through housing and stuff? So some people say there is a sliver, and they obviously blow this out of proportion, but they will make the argument. So I want to just ask if there's something.
Yeah, there's a sliver. Yeah. So first of all, okay. The baseline is that if you come here as a migrant on any kind of visa, you have exactly as you said, no recourse to public funds. It's stamped across your visa. And what that means is, I'm going to sneeze.
I'll cover it for you.
No, I'm not going to sneeze. Sorry. I've just got to take off my nose. What that means is, yeah, you can't get universal credit, you can't get child benefit, you can't get housing benefit, anything like that. As well as that, on a lot of visas, well, you either have to prove that you have a job, right? Because as I said, you're tied to your employer with the job anyway to be here. So on a lot of visas, you have to have income, or you have to prove that you've got money in your bank account, right? So like there are a huge amount of checks to ensure that essentially you won't be reliant on the state, arriving here and being reliant on the state. Now, if someone has leave to remain on the basis of, for example, their family member, right? And they fall on hard times, they lose their job. So they're not one of the majority of people whose visa is tied to their job. There's a small minority of people. If they lose their job and they get sick or whatever it is, and they become destitute. So not like straight away. You can't then go and say, oh, well, I'm in bad situation now. You've got no recourse to public funds. You're screwed. If you get to the point where you are homeless on the street, destitute, and you can prove that you are homeless on the street, destitute, then you can do what's called a change of circumstances application. And that means you can get that no recourse to public funds condition lifted to take you out of being on the street. And just like anybody else, like British people are provided with temporary accommodation if they are street homeless in almost all cases. And in those circumstances, also, then you can have that happen for migrants. But what will happen is that your visa conditions will be made harsher on that basis. So it will be made more difficult for you to stay long term if you apply for that change in circumstances. So essentially, yes, there are a small amount of extremely vulnerable people who we do support. But overall, the narrative about migrants on benefits, actually what they talk about is that what they mean is either households with one migrant member. So like say you're married to Ukrainian, you said, and also she might have citizenship now, and that's totally irrelevant. They'll still count you. If you relied on benefits, your household would then count as one that they would put within those stats so as to make those claims. So like one member of the family being non-British or born overseas, that's another thing. I've been British since the day I was born, but I wasn't born in the UK. And according to GB News, that makes me a foreign-born. Like according to those statistics, me and Boris Johnson and a bunch of other people count as foreign-born, right? So that's when they say, when they say like, oh, this many households, the council houses are taken up by foreign-born. It's like they're counting people like me. So there's loads of ways in which they twist the statistics so that they can come out with a number that sounds scary. The truth is, yeah, we do support some migrants. And the reason for that is that otherwise there would be a greater amount of destitution on the streets. And that's actually bad for society. But the vast majority of migrants do not have that option available to them. And the vast majority of migrants have to work at least as hard as any British person. And has additional taxes levied on them, like you mentioned. You have to pay an additional charge, not if you use the NHS, just because you might use the NHS. And you have to pay thousands of pounds in visa fees. And your employer has to pay this extra charge just for employing you. Like, there is a huge, massive, this is why the net contribution of migrants to the economy is so freaking huge, because we tax them in a million extra ways. And we do not allow them to rely on the welfare state.
Yeah, and it's like it kind of would veer the conversation too far off, but like it's the absolute kind of like Thatcher attitude, or like the very right wing attitude that is inherently always seeing benefits as a built-in problem, just inherently, because the way we understand it is that benefits is like a failure of one's personal responsibility, and we can't see that there's actually an economic argument to give benefits in the first place anyway. That's like a whole different political conversation. That's the problem.
Well, but it's true because they've done this study on no recourse to public funds, right? And even though it's a tiny sliver of people who end up in destitution, supporting them is so much more expensive if you let them get to that point.
Yes. Yeah.
If they could have just claimed housing support like other workers who are paid low wages do, then they wouldn't have ever become destitute. They wouldn't need to have emergency interventions and emergency accommodation, and we would be saving a packet. So I'm glad you said that, because I think we never hear just the case to be made that benefits are good, actually. Supporting people is good.
This is where we're so far off in a different direction in politics, where like if you were to look at like Scandinavian countries, Denmark and stuff, they understand, because we've bought into this mythology around capitalism that it's like this this perfect system that just it should take care of how it takes care, and if you're a failure, you're a failure. But like in Scandinavia, Scandinavian nations, they understand capitalism doesn't work perfectly. It has some elements that need to be addressed, and so they make policy to support that. So like they have like flexicurity, which I think means when you're unemployed, there's some negotiation between employers and the state where you get generous unemployment benefits, and it allows the companies the freedom to hire and fire much easier, which is sort of like it comes from actually more of a free market attitude, but it understands that obviously unemployment is bad, but giving the companies the freedom to hire and fire is better for efficiency in the companies. So they've come to an agreement because of, you know, the way their ideology in their country works, is that they understand that you have to protect the unemployed, and it's actually better for the economy long term. It gives more freedom to the employers to hire and fire, but it also gives some protection to the people. We are so in such a warped perspective that we don't even understand the economic point of benefits, that it addresses the downfalls of capitalism and keeps capitalism somewhat running to some degree. We've just indoctrinated ourselves into this kind of anti-benefits, it's a failure of your personal responsibility kind of attitude, that we can't even come close to even having this conversation with people. That it's actually good to give benefits, but
we're never even we're never having a conversation about outcomes in politics. That's the thing. It's like, if we talk about the outcome, then we'd have a totally different kind of politics. If we talk about the person right here who's like getting something that you don't think they should, it's easy to make the case that they shouldn't have access to it. But if the outcome of that is more poverty in our society and a greater cost to the state down the line, then it's much harder to make the case for that. But we never talk about the outcomes. We're always just focusing on the scapegoat in the minute.
Yeah, it's what drives you insane when you kind of move more to the left, because you realize like we're in like a faulty. We come from a faulty premise, so we have to justify things through the lens of a faulty premise, which is really hard to do. But yeah, that's like a sort of detour, I suppose. I wanted to ask then, so actually we can kind of tie it together. What would you say is the role of the state into integration? Because I was talking the other day on stream, I was saying like, what have we done to help integration? Because from my understanding, there were schemes like ESOL, and then we cut the funding to them massively, which has made it harder to integrate. So because, and it sort of ties to that Thatcher attitude, it's because we as a people see everything as everyone's individual responsibility. We see if a migrant comes to this country, it's their duty and their job to assimilate, which is, if you just say it as a sentence, sounds right, but it doesn't take any empathy into the reality of coming to this country, where say you do that and you try to assimilate, and then, you know, if it's say the Muslim community back in the 80s, 90s, whatever, they weren't allowed access to certain housing. So they tried, but they weren't allowed to be housed. They would literally, there were stories of like, they would go and try and buy a house and all the community would come around shouting the P word at them. So then they go, well, I'm probably going to move to the Asian area because it's like a little bit safer. So I'm kind of tying two things, but that sort of Thatcher, it's your job to assimilate. Where does the state play a role? If we weren't an insane country, what would the state be doing, and how can we do it better?
Yeah, well, I think if we focused on outcomes, it's interesting that the people who attack, who attack migrants from the right and say like, oh, they don't want to be part of our communities, also attack all the institutions that we have that help people to become, to protect. Like, I had a conversation with a woman at a party a week or so ago, and she was a very interesting person because she was she was more or less liberal, but she was like, but I am worried about like, my kids and the idea that, there could be schools where like most people don't speak English. And I'm like, okay, I can understand that it's not a totally irrational fear. It doesn't mean that you're some kind of like cancelable racist. Like, I think we need to be able to like have nuanced conversations about like, well, what we're doing as a society is we've cut the education budget massively. Schools, like class sizes, have grown hugely, and we don't pay teachers adequately, which means that a huge amount of them are leaving the profession, which means that we are now relying to an extraordinary extent in terms of teacher recruitment on, guess what? Migrants, right? Like, and we have just poorer structure, like literally schools that were crumbling to pieces, right? Under the last government, like in literal terms, schools are the places where, like, they're the first and best place, I think, where integration really happens, where cultures come together, where people from different backgrounds start to learn about each other and become essentially part of mainstream society. But we are damaging those institutions. The other things that protect us from, like, the threat of extremism, the things that people worry about, these are things like the rule of law, right? The protection of privacy, of individual freedom, and the support of integrated communities that like have less social exclusion. And these are all things that they work against, right? You want to, like, you want to have integration, but if you undermine the society that can provide that, then you create your own problem. So yeah, all these cuts, every cut to public services, every cut to education budgets, every cut, and that's what's coming in the next budget. That's what they're saying, right? Is that education is going to be the one under the knife in particular. And you're like, how do you ever expect, like, what you want is for kids to have spaces like youth groups, like places with like well-trained adults and enough supervision, like to be able to give them guidance, but also to get to know each other and have safe places to like explore and learn that aren't like putting them into, isolating them, putting them at risk of getting involved with the wrong people, having nothing else to do for thrills than to go out and like try shoplifting, for example. Like you want to avoid those outcomes, but you're cutting everything that provides an alternative. It's just so backwards.
Yeah, it drives me insane because like I did a whole video and it's like what you notice is that is the recurring story of all of British politics. Like aside from immigration, you start seeing that same exact thing with literally everything. Like I did a whole video on prisons and I was like, just if we were just to follow just logic, like just the data, the logic, provable good models versus provable bad models, we would adopt a Scandinavian model. We would not be doing the way we do it. But because we are, and our way of doing it, which is clearly illogical, it's clearly emotional, it causes all of the things we don't want. So it causes more crime and it causes like this continuation of crime. And you start seeing this with everything. You start seeing it with the refugees. I think you open my mind so much about the refugee thing, where there is for sure, if you bring in an age demographic of 18 to, 25, or I forget the exact age demographic, of young men, and you put them in a hotel for 2 years, and they can't learn the language, they can't have their family structures, and they can't engage
They can't
into
work.
they
They
can't
can't work.
work.
They can't study. They've got nothing. You take a it's exactly what you're saying. It's like you take a group of people who are coming here in any society. If you have economically inactive young men, right, it is bad for the society. It
Yeah,
is bad. Those young men end up. We all know. We all see it. That you end up in a situation where trouble will happen. It's bad
yeah,
for all of us. But why do we do this? Because the idea is that they can be made to disappear. It's like with benefits. It's like if we pay benefits, we encourage people to be poor. If we didn't pay benefits, their poverty would disappear. It's like it's so dumb. Like, oh yeah, yeah. If we just dump these people in some squalid hostel and don't give them any right to work, no English language classes, no outreach into the community, no support. And again, the community that's been cut to the bone, so it doesn't have the resources to go and support, although many communities still do a great work at trying to welcome people. And we say, you can't work, you can't study, you're just there. And we leave them literally, on average, 2 years. What do you think happens? How is that good for us? It's just idiotic. And these are people who could be a huge resource to us.
yeah. But it's like we don't think it's again it's coming from that wrong like epistemic point where it's like we don't consider that they are just humans and they could be just normal people. We have this sort of like fear of them, this innate fear built in, and so then we end up doing all these things. It's like this overbearing, overcaring mother who's like doing everything to make the situation worse. They're
Yeah.
not like thinking clearly. They're doing everything wrong because it would be like it is just obvious that if you made safe routes, this is the thing you said, and I was like, I've not heard more clarity on this topic. It was like if you made safe routes and you allowed their families to come over, you will get less crime, you'll get better outcomes, and it'll be a net benefit. And it's like it's so obvious, but we do everything against it, and like that's an insane.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing, and I think that there's when we're talking about immigration, especially you see politicians talking about immigration, and they say that like the worst thing you can be called is out of touch, right? You don't understand people's concerns about
Legitimate
it.
concerns, yeah.
Exactly. And so what they've turned to out of total cowardice, right? Because they're too afraid of being told that, is to treat people like freaking babies, right? To tell them, yeah, 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 you're right, and we can stop this. And we can, like, and a lot of people will say, I don't mind immigration if they're coming on a visa and they're coming to work, but I don't like those people who are coming through irregular means. And like, it's like, there is no way for those people to come on a visa, right? They can't afford it. I've talked about how expensive the visa is. So they they exist. They like this is the world. There are countries where there is a total lack of opportunity, stability, safety, security. Um, People, what we do, what would you do? You move to where there is stability, where there is opportunity, where there is security, where there is a future, like I say, where you can have kids that will have a life, you know,
Yeah.
will have a future. That's what we do. You're not going to make that disappear. It's just not possible to make that disappear. All of the cruelty, all of the intensity, like you can go as far as you like. We can become like Saudi Arabia. They don't have the Refugee Convention. They don't have any human rights. They're not in the European Court of Human Rights. They literally shoot people trying to cross the border irregularly with guns and kill them. Men, women, children, they kill them at the border. And what happens? Do they not have irregular migration? Of course they have irregular migration. They still have irregular migration, even when those people have no rights when they get there, because they have more opportunity there for a future than they do in the places where they've come from. You cannot make this disappear. And so, in your efforts to make it disappear, you just make the situation worse. Whereas if you accept that, like, like the Karate Kid, like the best way to have control is you let go a little,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
By squeezing harder and tighter, and you don't actually control things better.
yeah,
If you let people have flexibility, you work with the fact, okay, there's a bunch of people who need to come here from countries where there's war, where there's total, massive poverty, where there's total lack of stability and opportunity. Let's use them as the resource that we need because we do need immigrants. Let's give them ways to come here that are safe and orderly. Let's get them into training and into work into the areas where we really need people. And to take us back to the beginning, let's really work hard to protect good conditions for all workers and good pay for all workers. And then, hey, I mean, it sounds like I'm describing utopia. It's just freaking realistic, right?
Mm-hmm. Do you I was going to say, so one of the things I did in a video was to sort of paint the alternative. So let's say we go down the Farage route and we do that. Can you maybe make a case for what would happen if we were to just be insane about refugees? What, like, because I understand British people are deeply individualistic, and that is our culture. That's what we've been systemically and culturally pushed all our lives. So I try and make a case why it is in your self-interest for refugees to be handled with sanity. I make the case around geopolitics, global stability. You worsen poorer nations, which actually makes it worse for global trade. It makes it worse for terrorism, radicalization, etc., etc. But maybe you probably have more insights into that.
No, I think you're totally right on those points. I think also, like, yeah, when you squeeze people out of a safe route, what happens? They take an irregular route, right? There is always going to be a border guard that you can bribe. There is always going to be a document that can be forged. There is always going to be a piece of our coastline that is not covered in barbed wire and sniffer dogs and drones, right? It's just a fact, like, we're not going to fully militarize our entire border, nor is France, nor is any country, right? It's just an insane prospect. We need people to be able to go in and out. And that means that there are going to always be ways in and out for migrants who have no other way to travel, right? So if you clamp down, if you say, like, the direction that I think we're going in this country, frankly, is leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, leaving the Refugee Convention, saying people don't have the right to claim, to be refugees, to stay here, to become regular citizens when they come. Then those people come, and again, we have the work, we have the labor needs. We need people, and maybe we can talk a bit about the aging population after, but they will still come. They will just be underground. They will just be completely outside of any protections of the state. Whoever employs them will be a criminal who is willing to exploit them. They will be much more underpaid than they are now. They will be in situations where they are far more at risk of violence and being coerced into crime. So they will be trafficked into the drug trade. They will be trafficked into prostitution. They will be trafficked into committing petty crime on the streets, right? You create an underclass. You do not make people disappear. Nothing Farage does. Like I say, even the Saudis, and they're like way more extreme than even what Farage is promising us. They've not made this disappear. People don't disappear. People move, people exist, People need places to go. They will find ways of eking out a living, even if those livings are harder and more abusive, because people have hope and people want to live and people look to the future. So, what you are doing by denying them rights is creating more crime, more danger, more risk, more low pay, more exploitation in our society. That is all you do. You do not make these people disappear. And when people are afraid of like, like, oh, if a migrant comes here, they could commit a crime. If you're around people, there is a possibility that one of them may harm you. You cannot protect yourself from crime entirely. But what you can do is look at what the evidence tells us, like creates less crime in society. And that is reducing social exclusion. If you deny people the right to ever settle here, they are socially excluded.
Mm. Yeah, it's so spot on. It's so spot on. It's so. I've shared this on Twitter, so we've got so many right wing trolls in there. But it's maybe that's a good question actually. How do you think? Do you think our job is to try and appeal to people entrenched in it? Like, how much ground do you think to be persuasive in this conversation do we have? Like, what do you think politically is the route to trying to like get us to stop being insane? Like, how do you see it? Because I don't know, you've been in it for so many years. I don't know,
Yeah.
you seem unfazable. Like, you've been fighting this fight for so long, and many people would have given up at this point. So I want to see what drives you, what makes you optimistic about it.
Well, I would say that like a lot of people say to me sometimes, "Oh, well argued, but you'll never convince them." And I'm like, well, I mean, first of all, I don't know if you've ever had this happen. I've never had it happen that I have an argument with anyone about anything like political. And during that argument where we've been discussing things, they've gone, shit, you're right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Actually, I've just completely changed my mind. That isn't how persuasion works. Continuing to have the conversation and to put forward your case and to expose people to the ideas that you believe to be correct is the only way that over time people move a little way. So I have the people who are already voting reform and who are convinced that Muslims are evil and that we're under invasion and all of this stuff, they, they may be the people who comment on my videos, but they're not the people I'm talking to. I'm not going to convince them. I'm not the right messenger to talk to them. They are already a long way away from where I am. But there are people, and the vast majority of people are not that far away. Are much more like, yeah, I see the need for immigration. I just want it to be managed well, and it seems to be dangerous. So maybe if we clamp down on this, maybe that sounds like it could work. And if they hear the argument that actually, like, we you agree that we need migration. So, okay, let's manage the migration that is coming to us and let's use that migration in order to fulfill our needs. So the people who need to come here, let's start with them and let's use that. Those people, I'm not saying they'll suddenly go, oh, yeah, you're right, and it's fine. But the only way that we have any opportunity of getting them there is by continuing to put out that argument. And the right is very, very well funded and organized at the moment, right? Like very well funded and organized. So you look at how many millionaires and literal billionaires you have donating to the Reform Party at the moment. And, putting on huge conferences where like more and more extreme far right opinions are being put forward. And then discussed across our media. And, you have this guy, Paul Marshall, who is the majority share owner of GB News, and he's bought The Spectator, and he's in the running to buy The Telegraph. And he's a billionaire, and he's getting richer and richer. Like, they have a lot of money, and they are churning out content all the time, churning out opinions, more extreme ones, less extreme, and like across this spectrum. And they are trying very hard and being very successful to fill the narrative with lies. I mean, essentially, it boils down to lies. Sometimes there's a grain of truth in it, but it's essentially lies and it's racism and it's the opposite of what I want. So the only thing that we can do is to keep providing the alternative for the people who are out there looking at stuff that the only input they get is not that right-wing bullshit. I'm sorry, I'm allowed to swear, aren't I?
For sure. We encourage it.
Yeah, like I think that we have, if you scroll on TikTok, if you scroll on YouTube, if you scroll at, there is so much more content from the right, so much more. And there are people who are funding that Hope Not Hate did this investigation, and they were like, there is like just this one random billionaire, and he's just funding tons and tons and tons of individual right-wing influencers to just He's not telling them what to do. He's not telling them what they have to say. It's just put out anti-migrant content and whatever you want, just do it, and I'll pay you a salary to do it. They
Yeah.
expose that that's happening. I'll tell you what, that's not happening on the left. That's not happening on the pro-migrant side of the argument at all. Otherwise, I'm missing out on something that
Yeah,
you're not.
yeah. I'm waiting for that George Soros bag. Everyone's been saying
Exactly.
like we have all like there is no funding this side. Like
None.
it's
Nothing.
always, and you get invited to anything. It's always like, yeah, we can't pay you, but you know. So it's obvious there's no money this side, but yeah, they're so clever. Like if I were to separate myself from it on an individual level, I'm always quite amazed by how smart the right wing is in manipulating people because
Yeah.
it's incredibly well done.
And I think you got to admit, like, do we have a real lack of talented politicians at the moment, but we
Yeah,
got one who's a very talented politician, and it's Nigel Farage. He can
yeah, yeah,
talk like a human being. You hear him talk, he sounds like a person talking. He doesn't sound like a politician. He has prepared those lines, and
yeah.
he is lying through his teeth, and he is twisting things, and he's as bent as any of them by miles, but he doesn't sound like it. He sounds like someone you're just having a normal conversation with, and that is a talent that so few of them have.
Yeah, he perfected that his whole career. That's I always say that. Like as a political actor, he's incredible. Like he does a great job. I wish we had more of that. I think we're growing at the moment. I would say I don't know because I've not been a long-standing lefty, but I would say at the moment it feels like there are more voices that are starting to cut through that have started to seem more common sense. Like I hate that term because it's so loaded, but it in the past it felt like whenever I'd hear a lefty, it was often like it I don't know, it just felt like it was very emotive and not logical. But
Yeah.
now I think there is a pivot where you're starting to hear people talking on the right that actually come across more emotive, and then you hear left-wing voices coming in that seem in a bit more like sound in reason, and like you go, yeah, actually that kind of makes sense. It's great.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any, does that maybe motivate you? Have you noticed any change
I think
lately?
that's a comeback. I think it's very interesting. I mean, obviously, like, I think I was a critical supporter of Corbyn, but I think that the complete just like implosion of that movement was a real blow for the organized left in this country, like a huge blow. And it's taken us many, many years to even start to come back. But I'm starting to see it now. I am starting to see it. I'm starting to see the Greens making much more compelling and effective arguments. I'm starting to see, like people like Gary's Economics. There's this guy called Craig. I can't remember any. Like there's more and more voices who are willing. We're getting better at it, I
Yeah,
think. And we're recognizing that it's no use saying, oh, it isn't fair because the media's got a right-wing bias. Like, okay, fine. And then what?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah, it's not
exactly.
fair. Life's not freaking fair. We're just gonna have to get on with it and do what we can and make the best arguments we can. And I will make like I think that most people who are already on side, like they come from a carrying position. Is you understand that these are just people and that we should care for people and we should help people who need it. And I will make that argument until the day I die. But I'm perfectly willing to make a completely like hard-nosed economic case, right?
Yeah,
I'm
that's what I'd be.
perfectly willing. Yeah, yeah. I'm perfectly willing to talk to you about like, yeah, like how are we actually going to protect the rights of workers in this industry? I'm perfectly willing to talk about like, all right, how do we go about a system of immigration that promotes better integration? Like that, like I don't think that there's a huge problem, but I can recognize that there is a huge problem with people thinking there's a huge problem, and there are pockets of problems. And
Yeah,
so how instead of saying, right, well, I dismiss that, I'm willing to have any argument with you. And I think there's more and more of us who are realizing that social media is a place where we do have power to control the narrative and channels like this and stuff like that. And B, that we just got to go in there and like I remember the first time when I went on Radio 4 Today program, which was like years and years and years and years ago. And I was very young. I was like early in my career, and it was a bit mental that I was going to go do that. And I was going to go argue with an MP about refugee policy. And someone said, "Oh, aren't you nervous?" And I was like, "Well, of course I'm nervous, but I'm also like very, very convinced that I'm right. Like I
yeah,
know more about this than him, and I know that I'm right. So why would I ever be scared of an argument if I'm sure I've got the answers, you know? Like I might not always be the best advocate, right? Like I might screw up an argument, but I believe that I am right, and therefore I should be able to make the case. And I have to think about how I need to make the case and how do I need to present this. Because if I believe it, then I should be able to defend it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think you'd be able to like. I think over time, hopefully, you'll be able to get onto like some of the. There's spaces in the internet where we need to try and get into, and it's people like trigonometry. So like, I'm gonna hopefully go on there at some point soon. And I was like really happy because I know like obviously I think he's insane, Constantine. I'm sure on an individual level, I'm sure we'll have a nice chat and we'll be friendly, whatever. But I really disagree with his political analysis. But I was really quite grateful that they've wanted to talk to me because it's like at least getting my point of view into a space that it never hears it.
Yeah.
And I'd love to see you go like, because this is the thing. Like, I'm, as I say, just a guy, and I have to try and remember what smart people are saying. And so I would like to see people like yourself, or anyone who's like
But
actually,
I'm just a girl standing in front of a boy. But no, but like I mean, we like people need to have a bit of confidence and like
yeah,
I think we're easily told that like who am I to say, right? And I don't think that that's right actually. If you feel strongly about an issue, I think you should be feel confident to go out and make that case. And I think also there's a question of messenger, right? Like so I think you're a great messenger to go on a show like that. I think that there's people that I talk to really well about this issue who want to hear it from me. I'm not a migrant, I'm white, you know, I'm middle class. There's a lot of people in the country who want to hear that kind of message from someone like me. But there's
yeah,
a lot of people who won't hear it from me. And we need other messengers and other voices to be taking up that position. Like we need never think it's not your place to make the argument for something like this is what I mean to say like it is we need I can't talk to like working class men as easily as I can talk to other demographics whereas you can right
yeah, yeah.
because you were just a better messenger for that you're just somebody who is considered closer to who they are.
Yeah, it is so interesting. It's like that was one of the things that kind of I realized was like that's an argument for diversity. Like, and it's so funny. Like people would, like on the right, they would poo-poo that, but I know firsthand that there are people that only have engaged. I only engaged with the left when I saw Gary. Like that
Yeah,
really like shifted my perspective massively. Why? Because of something as arbitrary as that he was more similar to people I hung out with.
exactly,
It's like,
exactly.
and it's like, yeah, it's again when we were looping back, like to loop it back to like that diversity, that the whenever we make attempts to try and increase integration into society, it gets like harangued as being, I don't know, like trying to destroy white culture or blah, 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 or like forced diversity, anti-meritocracy. But it's like, it is just truth that if you see people like you in a space, you're more likely to want to engage in that space. And if what we're trying to say is that we want to see more, we want Muslims to integrate more, so we want to see them in like, I don't know, some fucking football advert or something like that. I don't know what it is, or like some job
Yeah.
or something. It's
I
like,
mean,
it,
you hear
you know,
that? I reckon football. I'm a big football fan, and I
I'm
really
not.
do
I'm
think
not. I
that
don't know why I said
it's
it.
football that can change the world. Oh no, we're gonna have our first big
Yeah,
disagreement.
yeah.
Oh no,
I'm a
here we go.
Badminton fan.
All right, okay. Well, I'm a big football fan, and I see that as like something like it's trite to say it, but it's true. Where like there was a very significant shift. Like the types of people who watch football, are very much stereotyped as like something that they're not. They're just ordinary people that
Yeah,
if you can communicate to them through football, they're not watching political analysis. They're not like not all of obviously all of them. I watch political analysis and football. Hey,
yeah, yeah,
but like there's a huge demographic there of just completely just like your run-of-the-mill British people because it's such a popular sport and
yeah.
so many different people support it that like messages that reach people through football. And this is why I mean like Gary Lineker and all that. I think it's so powerful because if you're showing you're one of us already, right? And
Yeah.
then and that's why like
Because
it's
they
like what
can't
we say
other
about
you at
like
that point. That's the thing. Like they can't call me a woke lefty because you can just hear and see me. I'm obviously not. My hair ain't blue. Like it's kind of
yeah.
obvious. They can't other you, and that's their main goal in right wing politics is to other, and then you can
Yeah.
dismiss.
And all of that's not to say, like, I do also think that it's so fundamentally important to hear from the people directly impacted by this, right? So, like, here migrants are able to like talk about like their own experiences. But I think that there has been in the past, in the recent past, a sort of tendency for us to tokenize, especially refugees, and get them to not talk to us as individuals with opinions that are valid and important and who come from a perspective that most of us have not experienced, but to get them to just tell us about the bad thing that they experienced. And I think that was a mistake. I mean, obviously, people telling their story is important, but on their own terms, as part of their own advocacy, that makes sense.
Yeah,
But just as
yeah.
an example of
Cart
here's
them out.
someone that you should see as, you know, a charity case, I think that was a bit damaging. And I think I'm glad to say that I think we've really moved away from that idea. And there are people with experience of different types of migration are brilliant advocates in their own rights for on the politics of the situation and talk like I do about it, not because you know they have some extra claim where they can say, oh yeah, but also I was on a boat and therefore that's what you should care about me. It's like
Yeah.
just treating people more equally as
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
right?
because that again, that others them. It makes them like, as you
Mm,
say, it's a token, but you can't connect with it.
yeah.
When you say about football, that is the story of the Sun, like the Sun newspaper. The reason it popped off was because they got no, sorry, not the Sun. It was Sky. I think it was Sky. But anyway, they got the licensing rights to football, and then they just pumped right wing politics. So there was like
Yeah.
there was some, I can't remember what it was, but it was like people who read the Sun that voted Labour. And you're like, you know, as a political person, you're like, how does that work? But then you realize people are just reading it for the football, and then they just see some right wing shit. And so maybe you'll get
Exactly.
someone who's like my dad, who's really interesting, who he is like, if you were to get him going on like big corporations and like the wealthy, he would sound like your most left wing person. But then you could probably say something about like on the boats, and they're like, yeah, they get all the benefits. And you're like, how can you have those two opinions? It's because people aren't quite as into politics as say people like us, who so they're
Mm.
just sort of getting fed these things through newspapers or just sort of.
But that's really important point, right? Because this is where, and we're talking about like, I do think that there's hope on the left at the moment, but I think there is a really big problem, which is that people like Gary's economics, like brilliantly making the case about like the need for redistribution and wealth inequality is the driving problem. And I think that is resonating really, really well. But people are still afraid to talk about migration from a left-wing perspective. People are still afraid of the arguments that, you know, we were talking about like wages and like, you know, understanding ordinary people's concerns and all of this stuff. People are afraid of that. And the problem is that the right knows that. That's why that's their focus, right? If we don't win on immigration, I'm saying this all the time at the moment because I really want everyone on the left to like understand this, and especially left-wing politicians. If we don't win on immigration, we will not win on anything.
Mm,
If we don't win on immigration, if we can't make that argument, if we can't win and persuade people and change the narrative and take them on and say, no, that isn't right, and I stand for this, and it's something different, it doesn't matter what you have to say about the environment that's super compelling. It doesn't matter how good your economic arguments are, then everybody agrees with you on a wealth tax. Because if they can be convinced that at the end of the day, the most important thing is kicking that Muslim, then none of the rest will happen. And the right wing
mm.
agenda will get through, and we will have a reform government. We need people to always be saying, if they believe that we need to protect the rights of migrants and that they you know that they don't believe the racist myths about them, we need more people to be making that argument
It's very true.
and
That's
connecting.
such a good point. It's like I think what you're getting at is that you're conceding on a very deep philosophical thing, which is to say that individuals are like unequal in terms of worth. So if you're sort of saying like, if you concede on that point that you are giving some ground to the idea that some cultures on some types of people are inferior to other people, and that's like the key thing on the left, is what we're trying to say is that humans are of equal value and worth, and we need to create a society that gives stakes and power to every level of society and create this sort of equilibrium of power so that we get good outcomes for all people. But if you give an inch to that argument that you're saying that this group, no, not those, then you're
Yes.
losing that core leftist argument. That's a very
And
good
from there
point.
everything crumbles.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I feel like it's like kind of a nice one to end on, but I do have like one or two other questions that I feel I kind of need to ask.
Go
Um,
on.
so about countries, so I've just wrote crime refugee Sweden, and I just wanted
Mm.
to ask, like, obviously people go, oh, what about Sweden? And I wanted to ask, like, are there countries that do it well, and that reduce, because we accept that refugees can, if managed poorly, can obviously increase crime. Again, it's mainly because it's a young male demographic, isolation, etc., etc. We can concede that point, but we can understand there's different solutions to it. But I wanted to ask, are there places that do it well, and if you have any opinions on that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that on Sweden specifically, what there's always a different country that I'm like hopping from, like, oh, but this country, yeah. Sweden came up a lot because essentially there was a time when like and it coincided with, it was like 2016 or whatever, when Sweden was seeing a much higher temporary, I might say, rate of asylum seekers. And they also changed the way they recorded rape uh, reports. So instead of one woman reporting multiple sexual assaults was always treated as one previously. Now each one was treated as a separate and individual thing. So what does that do? It creates a massive spike. Suddenly, you've got a huge increase in the number of rapes being reported. And it was just purely a way of like how they're presenting the data differently. But that like obviously got caught onto, and it's become a narrative that we can't stop now. Like it's just this idea that happened because of asylum seekers committing crimes like that. It isn't backed up by the data, but as they say in politics, if you're explaining, you're losing. So there's that.
Yeah, interesting.
But now, sorry, that was my point, and then I forgot your question.
Yeah, just kind of like
on
countries that do it well. Yeah,
that's it. So there's actually not many examples of countries that do everything well, but there's some countries that do some parts of it well. Actually, across South America, they have significantly better approaches to migration, sort of in their constitutions. But whenever I bring that up, people say, "Oh, South America is very different to here." Actually, yes and no, but sure, okay. A closer example that we can look at is Spain. Spain has got a really awful border policy, but what it has is a very, very much better asylum integration policy. So when people are waiting on their asylum claim in Spain, and Spain, by the way, receives many, 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 many more asylum claims than we do here in the UK. They are matched with local, so they're sent to accommodation centres just the same as they are here, but they are matched with local businesses that are struggling for workers. They have they're slightly further along on this pathway of an aging demographic in Spain. So like they have a very low birth rate. They have like a birth rate of 1.2. I mean, it's really, really disastrously low. And they have a lot of older people, and that are aging out of the workforce. So they have a real need for workers. And we have that here too, right? But there it's very, very intense. And so what they do is they find these industries, core industries, things like construction, that are struggling to find workers. They match them with programs with the asylum seeker accommodation centers for training. And once you're in the country and you're in the process and you have your asylum claim pending, you are in training and getting into work for these core industries. And that obviously creates the circumstances for integration for those migrants. And it obviously it's supported also by Spanish language lessons for those who need it. And it means that those people are occupied and doing something that is useful and important for the economy and that is necessary. And that then you can also point to in the, like, Spain's economy is outstripping the US, is outstripping the entirety of Europe. And it has been, like, economists point to the fact that they are working very hard to integrate migrants into their labor force in the areas they need it as quickly as possible, asylum seekers and other types of migrants. And that is, to me, it's such a good example of how we should be going about things differently. I say that Spain is still not perfect, like definitely not perfect, but in the way that they are very clearly using, and also that, like, in terms of the rhetoric that the government says, it says, like, you know, we can be an insular nation that tries to get rid of migrants and we will be poor, or we can be a wealthy nation into the future, and we will have to work to integrate the people who are coming here, and we will have to make Spaniards out of people from all over the world, and we can do that. And, you know, we've been a nation of emigration in the past, and then we will not be a racist nation, a racist and poor and insular nation in the future. That's what their prime minister says. Can you imagine Starmer say anything like that?
Yeah. Like this is the thing. I always try and have the perspective of, like, so. Like I love British culture, and you get people that are like I don't know, on the right that think we all fucking hate Britain or something. And it's like, I want people to celebrate and enjoy our culture. I'm just not protectionist in that I believe nothing can ever change or alter or tweak, because obviously the foundations of our culture is the integration of other cultures. That's how we got all of our like iconic things as the British, by doing that. So I'm like I believe there could be state-led initiatives of like, I don't know, like really celebrating our holidays more, really celebrating our architecture more, really like bringing people in, enjoying it, and like inviting migrants, etc., to take part and enjoy these things, equally enjoying theirs and sharing the culture and stuff like that. That's why I asked earlier about like, what's the role of the state? Like, in some ideal world, I would like to see the state celebrate our traditions, our culture, with great support and, you know, revivalist stuff of like, one of the things a lot of people on the right, when they talk about they love British culture, they never talk about the British culture that is lost to American capitalism, consumerism. They never talk about the high streets that are now Costa Coffee, Starbucks, all these just chains that do not give a shit about you. They're just squeezing money and then paying off shareholders abroad. Like, I try and sort of say like yes and a lot of the time is like, I too see that British towns are struggling and we are losing some identity in some places. And what I also see is that in the wealthy parts of Britain, they're not losing that identity. You go to like rich old towns in Britain, it's the most beautiful British architecture you've ever seen. It's all local businesses. And I love that. I fundamentally love that. But I want that to be shared with more people. And the state needs to take a role in preserving that and helping that. Equally, embracing migrants and their cultures and their traditions, and sort of like not conceding to this framing that we hate British culture or something like that. Because I don't think it is in any way true.
I think you're right. And I think that it is important. I think it's important to like, keep that in mind. Like, I mean, listen, I have a European passport, and, you know, a set of skills that mean like I can move. And I keep coming back to London because I fucking love this country. Like, I mean, but all the things that we hate about it, we just love it. We just love it. And the things that I love about it, I think, are the things that most people love about it. I love how British people's humor works. I love how self-deprecating we are. I love football. I love pubs. I freaking love pubs. They can't do them the same elsewhere, right? And I love our food because it's not just English. But I love that we have that, like, all those things. And I think you ask yourself, are any of those things under threat from immigration? No. What is this British culture that is supposedly under threat from immigration? Like, what is the tangible thing? And there isn't anything. There isn't anything at all that you can actually point to in terms of our culture that is under threat from that. And I think also, like, our regional identities deserve more of a seat at the table when we're talking about British culture, right? Like, we have totally failed to promote the use of like our regional languages. We don't have a culture where like St. David's Day is nationally celebrated and understood, and what's it about, and do we all, like, you know, why isn't there a leek dish that we all cook on that day? If we were in Spain, there would be.
Amen. Like, coming back, like, I just went to Ukraine and like experiencing the way they celebrate their culture. I watched this clip and it was like a British geezer, and he was saying the difference between Ukrainian nationalism and British nationalism. And I would correct the term. I'd say Ukrainians are, there is nationalism, but they are patriotic. There's a difference between patriotism and nationalism. I'd say nationalism is more of a political ideology, but they are deeply patriotic. And like, you go to Ukraine, they celebrate their foods, their holidays, businesses in there, because they haven't, again, been rotted by consumerist capitalism. They like will do things that will lose their money. They will make these pascas, which are like panettones, and they'll buy the machines and they'll do hundreds of them. They'll be throwing half of them away because they are not going to make money on it, but they do it because they see more value in their business than just making profit. Like, they are providing a service to the community.
They're part of a community.
Yeah. And like, you go there, and the way they, you know, half the youngsters aren't Christian, but they always go to the church and do the thing where they splash the water on you, and they love it. They love all that stuff, and they celebrate it. And then when you come, they want you to be a part of it. They're like, they're so excited. My wife's Instagram is literally me saying Ukrainian phrases and like eating that food and stuff. And when I go there, everyone welcomes me, and they are happy, excited, and vibrant. And also, they're not so protectionist. They will happily see their culture evolve and change. So, like with the young generation, they're taking old patterns, embroidery work, and putting it into like really stylish, fashionable clothing. There's a company called Ethnodim, and it's like Zelensky wears it and shit. And they're like cool and stylish. It's like streetwear mixed with old traditional stuff. Old dishes are celebrated. Blah 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 blah. Their top TV show, sorry to bang on, but their top TV show is about one of their biggest exports was a show called, I think it was just called Borscht. A guy called Klepetenko went and found this old recipes that were lost from old grannies, and they love and celebrate it. Yeah, it is. And then you come to Britain and you go, who are the nationalists here? Who are the patriots here? And it's anger and like fear. It's
people full of hate.
Yeah, and it's like it's like this sort of worried mother who's like holding on to something, and they don't even seemingly love their own thing. They seem to just be more filled with a hate and a fear of their
It's this fear that something's going to be taken away from you. And I think it is made more complex in the UK because of our history of empire, right?
Yeah.
Because for such a long time we have had a very, very diverse population, and we have had a very, very significant influence from India, Pakistan, Nigeria, like the Caribbean, like very significant influences on our culture. So it's our culture, and this, we're not unique in this, right? This also applies in like the Netherlands as well. They have like a similar situation as well. Like there are other countries, but our culture is a mixed culture.
Yes, yeah.
That is its characteristic, and it's wonderful. I love that. And I think when people, you say like, I hate this idea that like people could think that like in London we don't have community. We do. It's just that like our idea of what community isn't a bunch of people with the same skin color, right? Is it like we can know our neighbors? We do. We like, we look out for each other. We interact with each other. We and less because we don't have those third spaces, those community spaces. But like you go to the parks near me, the last couple of months where it's been so gorgeous weather, like it's such a vibe. A London park on a sunny day with like people from all different ethnicities, religions, and so on. But like we are a community, and we're all like enjoying a space together. And like the idea, it drives me absolutely mad, the idea that like the only thing that is a community is one type of, stereotypical white British town. Like there are lots of different things that are community in our country, and they all deserve celebration and they all deserve their place. But like there's this real fear of losing something that I don't understand where it comes from.
I think this is how I analyze it. Is they have lost something, which is that they lost their communities in many of these towns. So like a lot of what I see are people from outside of London talking badly about London, and then you go to London, everyone in London loves London, and it's like because I think it was Ordinary Things made a video on this. We differ on this opinion, but he made a good observation, which is that London has been rewarded by multiculturalism because it's done it right, it's done it well. Then lots of parts of the country who have seen their high streets decline, who have seen their core industries leave, their culture, their community is being killed. It's been underfunded. They shut down. I was watching a guy talk about somewhere, I believe it was in Scotland, it was like a politics show, like man in the street kind of thing, and he was saying like they're cutting the funding for the bus for the kids to go to the schools, and it's like, so these towns are being absolutely neglected, absolutely the only businesses left are like these soulless husks that are like not locally owned, they'll be owned by some random multinational, and their community has been destroyed, and it has been not the successors of multiculturalism. It's just been the people who have just been kind of left behind. And then they see London, they see it as different, and that there's something going on there, and they're kind of being told these stories about it. And also their experience with refugees and migration is effectively, from my understanding, actually it'd be good to get your opinion on this, is that I've heard that it's private companies that manage the distribution of the housing provisions for refugees, and because they're trying to turn a profit, they will go for cheaper, poorer areas. So they will put refugees into poor small towns, and they will not put them, you'll not see them in Chelsea, you'll not see them in Hampstead, you'll be seeing them in poor small towns in the north. So their experience of immigration is we've randomly got plonked a bunch of people we don't know, and our high street is dying because of other economic factors that they'll probably not be talked about. So maybe, you could talk just briefly, or however long you've got, but just on that, because I think that's super important.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that is, I mean, this has been actually the case for a really long time. The hotels made it particularly visible. But essentially, where most asylum seekers have been housed for, oh God, when did this dispersal policy come in? It came in like 2010. No. I want to say it was under Blair that it came in. Sorry, I've got some neighbors being loud. I hope that's
No, I
not
can't hear
coming
anything.
back. Okay, good. And essentially what that meant that most asylum seekers are housed in properties that are categorized as hard to let, which means like full of damp, like basically like you cannot commercially rent those places out, right? So these are places that have been left to rot by developers who own them and who just are waiting on how to turn the best profit off them. And then you put, what's the cheapest way to house asylum seekers? Because you don't have to house asylum seekers on the same standard as anybody else in the country, right? The standard for housing for asylum seekers is legally lower.
That's
And so you chuck a bunch of asylum seekers into these areas that are super deprived, that and you group them together, and the hotels has massively exacerbated that, because obviously it's like these incredibly visible spaces where a bunch of people are put in and they are concentrated there, and as we've discussed, don't have anything to do, don't have any work to go to, don't have, and they are put into deprived communities who have also been poisoned. And there is like, concerted efforts in these towns, like of local groups to share lies about, like this asylum hotel is coming and they're going to be like this and this. And obviously people, like, under those circumstances, it's totally understandable. And this is another thing that drives me absolutely nuts, because like we're told all the time that the left demonizes those people. No, I've never met anyone on the left who doesn't say, I completely understand where this fear and where this resentment comes from, and where those tensions grow from, because you are a very socially deprived community, and then you are having a lot more poor people put suddenly into a place where like there's nothing, there's no high street, there's no services, there's no GP appointments. Obviously that's a bad, like, it's just insane. It's like, obviously if you manage it like that, it's going to have bad outcomes. It's not the fault of the people involved on either side, frankly. And we could manage it so much better. And one of the most galling facts about this is that there's three companies that run this process, and one of them is called Clear Springs Ready Homes, and they run the most asylum hotels and these squalid, like, hard to let housing across the country. And the majority shareholder of that is a man called Graham King, and he has just entered the Sunday Times rich list. He's become a billionaire, and that is public money that has all gone into this one man's private little pockets to create this misery for such a huge number of people across the country. And that could be run, and there are models, like, refugee organizations have modeled this. That money, if it was given to local authorities for them to provide housing, not just for asylum seekers, decent quality housing for everybody who is homeless and who needs temporary accommodation, that same money, that billions of money, would be invested into our housing stock in our local authorities, instead of that one dude on his freaking mega yacht. It's just insane. Why are we allowing this service to be privatized? It's just so incredibly destructive. And why is it? Because that guy is a donor. Like, he has been a donor in the past to the Tory party who set up that contract with him. Like, you got to look at the people with power and money in this society to understand who's actually fucking us.
Yeah, man. God damn.
Makes you mad, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's like sometimes being on the left makes you feel like you're crazy, because you're just like, it seems so fucking obvious, and it's like so hard. Like, I think really what I'm concluding from our conversation is it's such a deeper, when we were talking about that kind of like deeper problem of the way Britain operates and sees the world, that everything's defensive and individualistic, and like we can never see humans as good. We have to see us as individuals with conflicting interests and we're fighting each other. Whereas if we
Yeah.
were just to think collectively and we're just to think as the British people, we would be able to benefit, make a better world, and everyone would be able to win. But because we have these disproportionately powerful people with their own private interests, just
Yeah.
pushing the country in a way that's worse for us. To me that feels like there is like a way of using immigration and asylum, the conversation around it, to win us the moral ground. I actually really agree with what you said earlier when you said if we give this one away, if we give them that, we lose the whole game. And I think you're absolutely right, because we have to make the moral, principled, and logical and economic arguments that this is how we should start thinking as a nation, and not concede to this insane right-wing individualist attitude that is going to only work for a very small percentage of the population and is going to make your life and everyone's life worse, not just the migrant, but yours worse. We need to like win this argument.
Specifically, like there are like just some just completely undeniable facts here. One is that we have a birth rate of 1.4%. Now, I think that there are lots of things that we can and should do to encourage and make it easier for people to have more kids. First of all, free childcare, right? Like, but that's not what we talk about. We talk about, anyway, I think that that's important, and that is longer term what is necessary, right? But there is a reality here that we have the baby boomer generation. They're called the baby boomers because there's a hell of a lot of them, right? They are reaching retirement age now. They are aging out of the workforce now. And our population, even with immigration as it is going to get older and older. And that means that the dependency ratio, the number of people who are depending on working age people to pay their pension, and let's be real, older people go to the GP more often, need to spend longer periods in hospital, need to depend on social care more, and they deserve to have all of that support provided to them. They depend for that on the working age population. And it is just a demographic fact. And it is disgraceful that there is no politician willing to be totally honest about this. It is a demographic fact that we cannot provide a welfare state and pay people's pensions without immigration. It is a fact. If you want to take care of people in this country in your own self-interest, you must agree that we need immigration. And therefore, we should manage the immigration that needs to come to us well and use that. And I think that that argument has a lot of potential to talk to people, because people want to protect the elderly. People want to feel like we're protecting our welfare state. And we have allowed the argument to become more people, less room in the NHS. It's bullshit. It's just bullshit. The reason why we have an NHS under strain is because we have our population of people over the age of 85 has skyrocketed and is continuing to skyrocket. And that is good. And they deserve care in an NHS that functions. But an NHS cannot function with more and more older people unless we have also more younger people who are able to work. And the most expensive thing you ever do in your life, most people on average in the UK in terms of the NHS, is be born. And you just take that away when it's migrants, right?
I think what you're politically on a persuasive level, the thing that I think people like about Trump Farage is that they felt that they were talking talking to people like they were adults. They were like, your lives are getting worse. They were lying about the solutions, the reasons, blah blah blah. But they at least addressed and acknowledged reality for a lot of people's lives. It has got worse. And I think
instead of saying like, no, we need to keep things as they are, it's working fine.
Yeah,
it's all going to trickle down.
That drives people insane. And I think the anti-immigrant crowd is going to be the exact same at some point, because that's going to be the new insane gaslighting. Because you are right, it's like, just factually, the demographic cannot sustain the older people. And unless you really, really, really want to make the world where older people just fuck you, go die, if you want to make that argument, fine. I think a lot of people are not going to be compelled by that. But I think that's a very good point. Make the very realistic demographic case, and also use this, because they're also saying demographic replacement. They're saying all this sort of stuff, and we're like, no, we want British people to have more kids. We are 100% on your side. We want to have that, but we want to provide safe support.
That's what makes it sustainable into the future, because like all populations are starting to decrease now, right? Like we need this factually speaking, we need it at the moment. We absolutely must have immigration. But longer term, if we don't find a way of stabilizing
Yeah.
our population replacement rate at a sustainable rate, then longer term you can't
Yeah, and it's the
use
same.
immigration to get out of this forever.
I'll make
We
the
need
same
it.
argument for Labour as well. I'm like, I am totally. If you want to do massive Labour drives to try and reskill, retrain local workers, totally cool with that. If you want to raise wages of these precarious jobs that we bring immigrants in, if you want to do these things to try and get a different outcome, fine with that. But I'm not fine with you just saying fuck it, pulling the plug, and then letting the country crumble. We need immigration in it. It's not that I'm ardently tied into I need immigrants. We need it factually as a country right now.
We need it factually.
And if we want to rebuild our the way we manage labour, if we want to rebuild all these sort of things, fine to talk about that. But you cannot just say fuck it and pull the plug, because that's not how the world will work.
And while we need it, we will get it. Like I say, people will come here one way or another. And if we reduce their rights, then it's what I've been saying. Then we are all fucking ourselves. Then we create a two-tier society. Then we create a spiral of wages being pressed down. Then we empower only a small elite at the top of our society. So we factually need migration, and a migrants' rights argument therefore becomes an argument for the rights of everybody in this country.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Zoe. That was really, really valuable. Yes. I really appreciate you coming on.
I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
I will be, I'll probably put these on my second channel and you can feel free to use any clips and stuff. But yeah, really appreciate it. Very enlightening. And thank you for your work. You're a warrior for sure.
Thank you for yours. I love that you've got a great community on this channel. It's really...
Yeah, don't mind the comments are a little bit far right, but that's just...
I'm used to that. There's a lot of bots, and also just some people with no life.
Exactly. Have a nice Saturday. Enjoy Are you in London at the moment?
Yeah.
Enjoy. Yeah. It's not that sunny, but enjoy a nice day.
It's not that sunny. Tomorrow's meant to be sunny. So
yeah. Well, enjoy your sunny weekend.
Cheers. All right. See you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cool. That was fun, man. That was
great. I love that. I love having some time to get into it and discuss different angles of it. I love that.
Oh shit! I've kept my stream going. Okay, let me do a goodbye to the stream and then.
All right.
Yeah. Cool. You can hop out. I don't mind it.
Right.
Yeah. But it was great chatting. We'll stay in touch. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
See you later. All right. That was fun, man. That was fun. Cool. There we go. Proper. That point she made about workers' rights, and that was just absolutely spot on about how what we're going to create is a class of people that are just less protected and less safe in society, the way we're doing it. Also, just the conceding this topic, we can't do it. I speak to some people on the left, and they're like, maybe we need to concede the immigration topic, and I think the point I was saying and Zoe was saying was you are allowing that philosophy that individuals are negative, they're bad, cultures are inferior, people are inferior, and it's not a humanistic perspective. It goes against all of leftist morals and principles. So I think that was a very good point, and we need to use it, but use it logically. Make all of the points about the state, the collective, the role of the state in organising and being sane, and starting to believe that funding people and funding the working class is the way the country needs to go. That's what we need, and this can be a good grounds for that battle. But yeah, I do agree. I just don't think you can concede it. I don't think you can concede it, because you're accepting that benefits are bad. You're accepting that any state support is bad. That is kind of coming from this wrong perspective, epistemically. Yeah, you got to make the case that to reduce immigration, you need massive investment. This is where I agree. If you really want to reduce immigration, and we can argue on the morality of that at some point, but if you genuinely, I will not accept someone talking about we need to reduce immigration if they do not also believe in massive public investment. Because we can agree on that, right? At that point, that's when you have real disagreement. You might disagree with immigration and I might like it. But you're denying facts and reality to say that we don't need immigration right now in the way our society is structured and organized. We need it. That is a fact, right? So we are operating from a faulty premise if you deny that fact. We can agree that in order to reduce immigration, you need massive state investment into creating more families that can afford to have children, and into creating a more well-trained labour force that can do these jobs that have skill shortages. I would disagree that we can I don't believe you can fundamentally run as a country completely or have all of the things you want in a country without immigration. I don't think you can have all of the skills. I don't know if you can train that is an old free market argument, that it's better for your nation to prioritize and focus on the skills that you're good at, that maybe your country is well situated for, maybe whatever you have just a competitive global advantage in doing. I actually take more of that free market perspective, and that's why I become a bit more pro-immigration. But either way, if we want to disagree on that, whether we need or don't need immigration, or reduce, you cannot exist with no immigration, but to reduce it, but you also don't believe in massive state support, you are completely lying. That's why I consider, when I made that video about the grifters, I consider a lot of them grifters because they don't have any alternatives. They don't have a solution. And so they're peddling you bullshit. They're lying to you. They're telling you that you can just end immigration. You can't. Our country would crumble. You'll have old ladies on the street selling flowers like they do in Eastern Europe. You just will, because capitalism cannot sustain mass old people, mass economically inactive people. Capitalism cannot sustain them. So they go to what would happen in many Eastern European nations. They will be on the street selling flowers, or they'll die. They will die. That is the reality. If you want to live in that really hyper capitalistic world, that dog eat dog survival of the fittest world of the industrial era, then make that argument. Be honest with your argument. What world you want? If you want that world, make that argument. But don't make this argument that you can have your cake and you can eat it. We can have high living standards. We can have wealthy pensioners. We can have everyone living well without state intervention. You're lying. You're lying. Or you're just very uneducated on it. There's no alternative than to confront the oil industry. Absolutely. We need better integration. Yeah, and this is what we were talking about on the stream. We agree. On the left, we agree. We want to help integration. But every measure that we do to try and do that, the right wing reject it. ESOL, which was English skills, blah, blah, blah. It was a course that immigrants could go on. I think it was free. They'd learn English. They'd learn about British culture. They'd learn all these things. We cut the funding to that, I think, by about 60%. So we had a way of helping immigrants integrate more, and we cut that. We also, back when the Muslims originally started coming to the country, like Pakistani, Bangladeshis started coming originally, we had, I don't know if it was in law, but de facto, I think it was in law, landlords could discriminate people on their race, and the local community could basically say, if an Asian person was coming around, they could be like, we don't want them there. And they could get kicked out of there. They basically would be harassed in the street. Taj was talking about this, that you would go to try and buy a house in the wealthy area. Actually, I saw a clip the other day. You go try and buy a house in nice Yorkshire or whatever, and the locals would come out and start calling you PAKI. They start saying the P word to you. So when they tried to integrate, they were rejected. When they try and do any public funded campaigns to help integration, they're also rejected by the right wing. The right wing do not they don't believe in anything deep. This iteration. I'm not saying there is no conservative values that truly exist. The real conservative values, pretty much all actual strains of thoughts, have been lost to neoliberal capitalist attitudes, dogmatic belief in free markets and minimal state intervention and support of working class people, or just people in general. That is all lost. There's very little actual conservative. A conservative and a progressive could really disagree on the family unit. They could disagree on that. I'm a conservative when it comes to families. I really, really, truly believe that family structures are fantastic for society. I really, truly believe that. I think all the evidence suggests that. That is a conservative value. There are people, I believe, maybe, is it Foucault? I don't know. Some really, really progressive people that would see families as a oppressive structure. That is a very left-wing view. We can take different agreements on that. I take a conservative view on that. But these are the debates you can have. We're not having those debates. because most people on the left have conceded that ground. Most people on the left, like generally speaking, concede the ground that family unit is a good thing. That's why it's the left and the right dichotomy. It's just not very. It's just pretty useless in many regards. Like I personally, you can have like lefties that really don't believe in the police. They believe like the police shouldn't exist. I believe in a strong police force. I believe you need to reform the police force, have them under heavy monitoring and like lots of transparency. But I believe in a strong police force. I believe more in the 1950s, 1960s, from my understanding, community-style police officers where they would live within the community. They would make themselves known to everyone in the community. You would, if there was any problems in the community, you would go to that local officer. You would know him by name. He would know you by name. That community-style policing, I believe in that. That's a arguably conservative value. These left and right, yeah, Joe's just said here, left and right, they don't really mean anything. You can have disagreements on stuff like that. There are lots of positions that I take a more conservative approach on. I do believe in religious structures. I don't believe they should be unquestioned. I believe that they can work as a community cohesion. I don't believe there should be secular. I believe that you should have multi-faiths. But I believe they're a useful device in society to have people having stake in their community so that they go somewhere where they know everyone in the community. They feel connected to everyone in their community. And therefore they might just think twice about treating someone like shit. You know, if you have some, what politics really is about, like you call it like stakeholders in society. Every member of society should have some responsibility to their community and to their people and the people around them. They should all have that. You need to have everyone having a stake and respect in society. Where neoliberal capitalism goes completely awry is that it tells people you mean nothing unless you have money. If you are the doctor who works a massively, like, you know, I don't know how many fucking hours a doctor works, but if you're a doctor or a nurse and you're working your arse off, but you're an immigrant and you're making no money, you don't get respect in your society. No one gives a shit about you. You're not respected. The guy with the Bugatti, he's the guy that gets respect. He's the guy that matters. And that's what our culture, our systems are telling people matters. And that's not a society that's cohesive and that can run. You need to have all members of society respected. The worker is as important as the boss. Arguably more so. The person on benefits is not some evil strain to society. They're a valuable member. They are a redistribution mechanic where they are being paid by the state and they are spending their money in the local economy. That local economy has one extra customer, and that's more money for the local economy. You need to start seeing people as stakeholders in society, and not this hierarchy of who is and who isn't important. Every single human is important. They all have a role. The most gifted, the most creative artists, the business entrepreneur, they are very important. But equally, just as equally, so too is the customer. Because without the customer, the businessman means nothing. Without the consumer, the artist has no one to listen to their music. That's how we need to start thinking in society. We do not think about that. We joke about college liberal arts students who offer nothing to the world. Of course they offer something to the world. Everyone offers something to the world. Yeah, that was fun. I really enjoyed that chat with Zoe. It was great. I'll upload it in full on my second channel. Left and right is really reductive language, yeah, but it isn't always a bad thing to simplify your points. Yeah, and like we work at the moment within this tribalized mode where you kind of have to play by that game. Like if I don't, I believe where I try and go, right, I'm on the left, like firmly on the left. On screen, is that the left? No, I think that's the left. I don't know. I'm firmly on the left. And I see that I can speak to from left to the centre to like centre right, just about centre right. I'm probably realistically not going to be able to speak to right wingers and far right people. I might be able to, there's certain types of right wingers I can speak to. I can speak to libertarian types. I can speak to I reckon people with similar conservative values around family, etc. I think I can arguably speak. I can speak to someone like my dad, who he has just like sort of good morals, good principles, but he gets led awry on certain topics. But he's a bit sways in the breeze a bit. I can talk to that person but I can't speak to someone who's entrenched into like far right beliefs. I probably can't. I was never. You got to think I also was never. You're on the left. I know it, mate. Is it not? Why do people think that I hide it? I don't hide it. I speak openly, proudly on the left. I don't know why people, oh, why are you not a centrist? Oh, look, I knew he wasn't a centrist. I knew he wasn't. Oh, what are you on about? I don't believe in the centre. The centre is the road to fascism. It is. Because the centre concedes the ground. It has no principles. It floats in the breeze. It goes, yeah, bros. Yeah, maybe poor people aren't shit. Maybe migrants are shit. Like, they don't. The centre really just sways in the breeze. It's like trying to keep the order as people move further and further apart. Yeah, like half the reason I left the right is because I genuinely actually believe in some of the things the right says. In meritocracy, in the family, in institutions. I believe in some of these things. Wait, am I left wing? I believe in those things, but I don't believe the right believes in those things. I don't believe it has the ability to believe in those things because it's so tied in. So you can have conservatives, and this is a rare breed, but you can have conservatives that are against capitalism. They exist. Have you ever heard of any of them? There's even one or two in Parliament. They're against capitalism. And in our political structure, because the way we frame politics, that conservative, no one can understand that. It doesn't work in our brains. No, some of them are. Some of them, or you could say they're more maybe socialist. You can have socialist conservatives. They exist. They tend to be anti-immigrant because of they believe in preserving culture or this sort of thing. Italian fascism is described by some people as extreme centrism. Yeah, that's very interesting, yeah. George Galloway, in some regard, but I don't know. So one example was, what's his name? Ed. I'll try and find it one minute. Examples of capitalist, anti-capitalist conservatives. Arguably, Peter Hitchens No, Peter Hitchens doesn't have any beliefs. Peter Hitchens, again, is a wandering contrarian who just doesn't believe in whatever you believe in. Whatever the person in front of him believes, he doesn't believe in it. So in one moment, he'll criticise Thatcher. In the next, he'll call the modern conservatives socialists. In the next, he'll say that social housing should exist. In the next, he'll say capitalism is inevitable and it's the only system that works. Like, he doesn't have any core foundational beliefs. He is well-read and knowledgeable, so he can make very persuasive arguments around certain things. And he can quote people. But his belief structure is basically, I don't believe in specifically anything. I believe in the opposite of what you believe in. And yeah. And equally, there's no solution to anything. That's also the core of Peter Hitchens, is that there is no solution. I'm 100% a nihilist and I think the world's going to shit, but I'm smarter than everyone. That's all Peter Hitchens? Yeah. That's all his shtick is. He's a massive grifter. Like, he is. He doesn't have a core, thing he's striving for. And, yeah, drugs are bad. He doesn't have any core sort of point of view, but he's well read, so he can justify he just uses his intellect or his knowledge to justify any position he wants to take in any moment. Peter Hitchens' worldview alienates everyone but himself. Yeah, because he believes of himself as superior intellectually. If you criticize right-wing bros, you're a grifter, bro. No, that's what I'm saying. You can be conservative, and you can be. That's where I'd say on a moral level, in some regards, I am actually more conservative. And I would say, to be honest, a lot of people on the left genuinely believe in institutions. They genuinely believe in the police force. That is an area of disagreement where some people have very different attitudes on how the police should function, but they tend to generally believe in the police. They also believe in the family unit. Some would even say they believe in meritocracy, but they don't believe in the system of meritocracy. So they would say, like, if you are hardworking, etc., maybe life should reward you. There will be people that disagree on that. What is a grift is when, in the era we're in right now, when objectively living standards are crumbling, objectively cost of living, because the cost of living is rising, inflation and housing problem. A grift is to look at the NHS is crumbling, etc. Look at the needs of society and conclude that the problem in society is trans woke Muslims. That's a grift because it's just not factually true. There's no factual basis for that. A conservative and a progressive can disagree on the philosophy of how, like, a progressive might believe that everyone should be equal. Like a real communist would believe that everyone should be equal. A conservative could say, no, I believe there should be hierarchy. There should be some social hierarchy. You can have that fundamental disagreement on a core level, but to conclude then that neoliberal capitalism is the only way, just factually looking at the world and looking at how society is working, it's not true. So you can have a conservative and a progressive can have different core philosophies and values, but they can't have different core facts, right? Climate change is another one. Climate change is an obvious one. You can't disagree. I'm sorry, but you can't. I'm just going to say it because this is how fucked we are right now, is that all this misinformation around climate change. You can't disagree on the fact that humans are having a negative impact on the planet and that it's heating up and that it's unsustainable and that something needs to be done about it. You can't have, not everything, that's it, yeah, they've made everything about opinions. There isn't opinion there. You cannot equate, if 97% of, and I'm sure there's someone who's going to link me, the myth of the 97%, but if the absolute the by and large majority of scientists conclude that humans around the world, disattached institutions that are not working together, are not lobbied for and paid for by blah, 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 if you cannot believe that the planet is heating up by human activities, you are just wrong. You're just literally just wrong. And it's not about having a difference of opinion. You might have a difference of philosophy. You might say, that is happening, but I believe so deeply in meritocracy that I don't give a shit about doing anything. And if the free market can fix it, fine. But if not, fuck you. You can have that. You can't disagree on it happening. You're not allowed to have different facts, right? We have to agree on the facts, and then we can argue over the solution to it, or the responsibility. Can you bring Friendly Geordie? Yeah, everyone tells me to collaborate with Friendly Geordie. I would like to. I don't really watch his videos, but I have in the past watched one or two. All my days, you believe in global warming. Are you a scientist, Sparky? This is my thing. Are you a scientist? Right. Are you a scientist? If yes, tell me your field. And tell me why you have more authority on that topic to talk about than everyone else in that industry. It's not an industry. That field of research. Tell me how you have more... I have to value people's opinions based on their authority on the topic, right? I can't just trust why the climate scammers are destroying Western civilization podcast by some bro. I can't. He doesn't have authority on that. You have to reference, like, the people who have authority on it. A true scientist values everyone's perspective. No, they don't. Where do you get that from? A true scientist does not value everyone's perspective. Scientists are critical. Their whole job is to be critical. to hear your opinion and literally go, that's probably not right, even if it's right. That's what scientists typically tend to have. The system of science is designed to be critical. So it's not everyone's perspective is valued. That's insanely untrue. Actually, you probably believed in the mask-wearing experts too. Actually, I was a right-winger at the time and I didn't wear the mask because I was a fucking... I thought I was defending Western civilization by not wearing a piece of fabric on my mouth at the time. And that whole thing, again, the scientists said, look, we think that masks work. They then eventually went, we don't think that masks work. And then you guys go, oh, you can't trust experts. But actually, that is the process of science. In a pandemic that is happening, the process is to go, we think this works, do this thing. It doesn't work, stop doing this thing. How many times are experts wrong? Oh, fucking crap. I can't deal with this sort of strain of thinking. It's so anti-intellectual and it's like insane. Oh, man. How many times have experts been wrong? That is the fundamental point. Go open your fridge right now. Go open your fridge. Sparky, if I said go open your fridge right now, would you open your fridge? Sparky, if I said to you go open your fridge right now, would you think about opening your fridge? Would you just go and open your fridge? BB. I'm a scientist. BB's a scientist. Why would I open your fridge? I'm just saying, would you do it? Would you do it? If you wanted to, not because I'm compelling you. If you wanted to go open your fridge, would you open your fridge? BB, if you wanted to open your fridge, would you go and open your fridge? You wouldn't open your fridge. You're a fucking idiot, bro. I'm banning you, idiot. The point I was going to make is, you are trusting that's Galileo fallacy. What are you wanting? What are you want? Bro, you go and open your fridge because through the regulatory bodies and the scientists and the people who have come up with the technologies, we have come to a conclusion that fridges are safe. They don't just blow up. They don't just blow up when you open the door. We've accepted that. You every single day, in every moment of your life, you trust experts. You just don't trust the experts that the right-wing grift machine tells you not to because it helps the oil and gas industry maintain their absurd profits at the detriment of humanity itself. Sparky, if you don't have a fridge and I banned you, I'm very sorry. I have deep empathy for you as a woke lib. Jimmy, we need more chats in the Discord. YouTube live chat is shocking. Yeah, I know, it's fucked, bruv. You know what it was? It was because I tweeted it. I shouldn't have tweeted it. That was live. I feel a little bit bad for Zoe because I was like, yeah, I tweeted it, thinking mainly, because I've left these on Twitter. But then all the right wing, they're replacing us people came on. And yeah, but either way, it was a very good chat, so it was really interesting. The anti-fridge right, yeah. Sorry, I should respect the anti-fridge right. Honestly, Jimmy, you should get some community mods. I want to. I need. If you're offering, Rosh, can you message me on Discord? $20. 1 minute. Why didn't I make you? $20, by the way, is my second channel editor. Big up $20. He is the boy, the legend, the man, the myth, the whatever. I'm going to make him a mod. Standard. Can review and remove some chat. Hide and put users on timeout. Can manage or block words and change chat modes in live. And also has complete. Let's do standard mod. I'm going to make you a mod. If you don't want to be a mod, $20, then just tell me. But I've made you a mod. I should have made you a mod a lot earlier. So the kind of rules on moderating is you can allow a little bit of right-wingers stuff, but if they start to just sit there and go, Muslims are bad, they're poisoning the lifeblood, and they just do this thing, just ban them. But you can have people, and sometimes I'll power trip and I'll ban people like Sparky because he wouldn't open the fridge when he wants to open the fridge. So welcome our new mod, $20. If someone's engaged in very bad faith conversation, I'll ban them because it's just because I'm an emotional human, and there's no structures of power and checks and balances on my ruling power in this chat to just ban people. Can I talk about any new docs I'm working on? Yes, I can. I'm working on I'm doing one on why Britain is bad at building. So like HS2, all this sort of stuff. It's a very interesting video actually. And then I'm going to do one on my story of going to Ukraine. I realise I talk about it a lot, and it's a very personal story, and it's a bit different than what I normally do. Every now and then I like to spice it up. So yeah, I'm going to do my video on Ukraine, which would be cool. It would be talking about lots of things. It's going to be like it'll be a bit of a rambler, but it will be very good. I hope. What's a video you want to make but you think it's too niche? Yeah, that happens a lot. I want to make one about the age demographics, so like the boomers and all that sort of stuff. It has been done a few times, but I think I could do a cool video on it. But I just wonder if it's too niche. Like the last few videos haven't been performing so well, so I'm trying to be a bit more like algorithm minded, which isn't my favorite way. I sort of do this mix. I have this mixed belief of like you need to always kind of reinvent yourself. Why are you banning people for your opinions? Because I'm a authoritarian. In this Jimmy the Giant community, I am an authoritarian. Yeah, what was I going to say? I can't remember what I was saying to us. Oh yeah, last video has sort of been doing a bit average. I need to go pick my wife up in a minute. Let me check how she's doing. Hi, my angel. How you need a lift. Join a union, absolutely. Stalinism is 100% cool, and no, it is not, my friend. I'll message you on Jimmy. Yeah. Should I DM or publish it? You can DM me. Yeah. A video idea about why our education system is failing. Yeah, like these sort of ones, they become a bit too niche. If I can find, you know what it is? You have to like find a way of wording it and a thumbnail that will like make people want to click. That's obviously what YouTube is. But some of these topics, whilst very interesting, if people watched it, they'd really enjoy it. There's a lot that they won't click on. And it's quite difficult. Like sometimes I'm in this sort of period right now where I had a real good run of videos for like the last 7-8 months that was all doing really well. And then like what happens is just an insight into the mind of a YouTuber is your channel goes like this. It goes insane. And you're like, I'm doing so well. I'm earning really good money. And then what happens is it does this. So like say it was like this, right? Say this was your baseline. This is your baseline. It goes like this. And then your baseline comes down to here. And then you start to really panic. You're like, fuck, the channel's falling off. Even though de facto you went from there to there. Because of the mechanics of YouTube's studio, it's like drug addiction kind of thing. So it makes you go, fuck, and you panic. So I'm in this bit where I'm like a little bit trying to reinvent the wheel a bit. Just do some topics that maybe move, capitalist brain moment, absolutely. And like there's a thing where you sort of have to, my instinct is to follow what I find interesting. And if there's any videos where I'm a bit unsure about because I'm like, I don't know, but I really want to do them, then I start to lean to that. So I tend to do one for the algorithm in this time. I tend to do like some for the algorithm that I feel will do well. And then I'll do like one that's a little bit off, my usual thing. Could it be posting videos so close together in a month? Not really. It doesn't tend to be. I always do that. It's just like audience fatigue. Some topics are just not generally that interesting, but it went from every video is 1 out of 10, 1 out of 10, 1 out of 10 to 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. The YouTube algorithm can just fuck you sometimes. But you still have to bear in mind, like, the average video is still doing well. They still get 200,000 views, which I'm happy with. But, like, yeah, it's just difficult. It's just quite a difficult game to play. Praying to the YouTube God. I've been in this game for long enough that I know it always comes back around. And usually the best thing to do is follow your creative instinct. So like the Ukraine video I've been putting off for a while because I thought maybe it's a little bit off of what my audience want, but I want to do it. And then I'm at the point now where I'm like, well, I'm in a point where the videos are sort of doing a bit average, so why not try something a bit different? Just keep doing what you're doing. I think your stuff is perfect to get into the geezers who've been misled by Ryan. Yeah, I agree. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. That's the sort of target, I think. £5 from Felix. Thank you so much, man. Jimmy, love your vids. Love you, brother. Maybe try and find some examples of other places and how we can do things better. Yeah, you know what? I am thinking about like a how to fix Britain kind of video, but it's so, it's a massive video, So do drugs and join a union. I would disagree with the first part. Again, conservative. Not a big fan of drugs. I agree with your right to do it. But I would say drugs are typically, I think there's an age where they can be sort of fun. In my genuine, honest opinion, is drugs are a cheap way of synthesizing deeper feelings. And if you can, what tends to happen with people is like, if a certain part of your life is maybe unfulfilled or something, drugs can be a cheap way of creating that feeling. It's like I was walking through. I was actually thinking about this the other day. I was walking through Borough Market in London, and I just had this sort of like almost acidy kind of feeling, like just this sort of wow, this is really cool. Like when you're an acid, you just have this sort of feeling of like everything is fucking sick, and you'll be in awe and like enamored by everything. And I was just walking through Borough Market, and I was so like almost overwhelmed. I walked into so many people, so many different types of people, all these different foods from different places. The architecture is fucking stunning. It's like this old, it feels like I've just been transported back into like the 1890s, and I'm like buying local stuff. And I was like just walking around, and I was like, wow, this is cool. It just felt like everything was perfect in that moment. It was like, this is beautiful. Everyone's happy. It was like all these people from different backgrounds celebrating and sharing life. It really like felt amazing. And I was like, wow, that's kind of what acid makes me feel like. I had this click in my head where I was thinking like, that was a bit like acid. And then I was like, that's kind of the feeling. Drugs are sort of trying to simulate these natural feelings. What capitalism does is it takes everything that was sort of natural and organic and takes it from you and then sells it back to you. So Trevor Noah was talking about this the other day. He didn't actually use the word capitalism because he's a little pussy. But capitalism takes your community away from you and sells it back to you. Maybe I'll get the clip up because he actually really did explain it quite well. Let me find it. So like, yeah, on a personal level, I understand why people do drugs. I think you should have the legal right to do it. I think there is a time and place. I'm not always against it. I think if you do drugs a couple times a year, I try not to have judgment on people anyway, because what works for me doesn't work for everyone. But my general sort of deeper feeling is that it's probably not good. But when you find yourself you're doing it a lot and you're getting very excited to do it, and it's like that sort of maybe what you center your most fulfilling cool moments around is like doing drugs, that's when I think it's a big problem. Like I'll have a drink with people, but again, that's more of a social. But then it's the same thing with alcohol. If you find yourself like you're getting so excited to do the drinking, that can be like an emptiness that you need to perhaps fill. And I think that's because society rips a lot of these things from you. I wanna share. I just want to play this one clip because I thought it was really fucking absolutely spot on. Trevor Noah, I'm not like, I don't know a lot about him, but
you have to buy somebody.
Watch this. Why can't you fucking? I have to do this and then click this.
The one thing that nobody seems to tell you is that as a country becomes more and more developed,
Capitalism.
The one thing that gets eroded is community.
Yeah.
The village disappears.
Yeah.
And what you have to do is you have to buy the village back.
Yeah.
You know?
You have to buy the house.
You
buy a
literally, you have to
housekeeper,
buy somebody to look after your kid. You have to buy somebody to help you clean your house. You have to buy somebody to help you fix your. You have to buy somebody to cook. You have to buy. You're buying the same village that they tricked you into not having. Like I'm always amazed at the con of it all. The one thing that nobody seems to tell you.
Pretty fucking based, I'll be honest. That's pretty based. Like, very spot on. He doesn't use the word capitalism. What do you mean? How is that rubbish? This is the thing, I don't know. Have you traveled much? Like, have you gone to less developed countries? This was so eye-opening. That's why I'm doing this video on Ukraine. It was so eye-opening going to Ukraine, going to a small rural community that live in, objectively, are in poverty, and being jealous of their lifestyle. If that doesn't fucking radicalize you, I don't know what will. Walk around a poor rural community in a absolutely, like in a country that's developing. Walk around there, experience life there, and you will go, man, something's been taken from us. They are connected to their community. They know everyone in the community. They all, you might not like everyone, but you know everyone. And everyone knows you. You will have your position in that society. You have some respect. You will have a connection to your land because you'll have a farm. You'll grow vegetables. You'll eat your vegetables. You'll be eating organic produce with no pesticides that would be only found in a middle class farmers market in Britain. You will eat that as the poorest member of society. You will eat organic grass-fed beef from the local guy down the road because he has a cow. You will have ownership over that. You will own that plot of land. You can do that right now. You can go and run your own organic stuff. Okay, you tell me, right? You tell me, okay. If I wanted this plot of land, how much money that's going to cost me? How do I do that? I'm talking about poor people that just inherited a house and land for nothing. They have all of this. In the UK, this would cost you easily $1 million. Easily. So if you want to fucking give everyone $1 million so they can have the opportunity to live that life, then do it. No, but they're not subsistence farming. They also are connected communities. So they have trade. They have stuff. They have toilets. They have washing machines. They have all this stuff. Get an allotment. That's not the fucking same thing. Having a small square to grow 4 courgettes a year is not the same as having land that you own and live off of. And bear in mind, look, I don't want this life, but there is a certain feeling. This is what I'm saying. It's radicalizing. Is that you realised allotment is the same thing. Bruv, this amount of land is not the same thing as a fucking... Alright, that's the UK allotment park. What are they called? They're called like... Yeah, look. When you have an allotment, you have like this. You get that. That is not the same as that. Like, don't be dishonest with yourself. Be honest. And so, yeah, the whole community, and bear in mind, I'm not saying, like, I'm not anti-modernity. Like, I believe you need all these industries. Not everyone wants to, I don't want to live that rural life, but I just noticed in their community, which is objectively in poverty, they had a higher amount of fulfillment and connection to their land and their produce and some autonomy over their lives. And they had some agency. They owned their own houses. In the poorest part of Ukraine, they own their own houses. And like, there's a sort of conversation around what does wealth mean? Like, what is wealth philosophically? If you earn £28,000 a year, but you are paying rent and you work 3 jobs, and they're all unstable jobs. You don't know your neighbours because you all live in a rented apartment that everyone leaves after a few years to go somewhere else when their job fires them. If your car broke down, you're out of work, you're in deep instability, you have no free time to see your friends and family, you had to move away from your family because you needed money. What is wealth? You earn 28 grand a year. The person in Ukraine earns about 2 grand, maybe 1 or 2 grand a year. However, that person in Ukraine owns a physical asset, being the house and the stability of which that house gives them. What is wealth at that point? What does wealth mean? You are objectively wealthier as a poor person in the UK, but you, in terms of currency, in terms of money, but in terms of ownership and quality of life, you are not objectively better off. You are worse off. So at that point, what does wealth mean? Let's see what my wife is saying. You get what I mean? These are like philosophical questions. We get to go on holiday to Tenerife. Not if you're the poorest member of society, you don't. The poorest person in society probably isn't going on holiday. And if they are, it's like a couple days away on like and to be honest, well, that makes sense. But yeah, it's happiness. Wealth is happiness and agency and freedom to have some ability to do what you want to do to some degree. I would say happiness and agency, connection to your land, your produce, connection to your work as well. Like some ownership over your work. That's another thing. You get, when you do a hard job, you get some of the, you have some ownership over it, a stake in it. Not just you're paid a pittance. Being healthy, that's another one. Yeah, with you on that, and I'm very left. I toked for years, and my buds still do, and very glad I quit, but still think criminalisation is not the answer. Yeah, I agree. 100% agree with you. Actually, a question for you, Jimmy. I assume you read 2025 Strategic Defence Review now. Do you think that Britain should invest high in national defence industries? And yeah, I do. That's, again, I'm conservative. That's where I have a conservative perspective. If people want to say that I think anyone who is not left-wing or not a socialist or whatever, if I think anyone who's not on the left is a grifter, it's not true. I believe in strong military. A lot of people on the left would disagree with me on that. Simply owning a house is fine for me. I don't want a big farm. Some small patch to grow some food. Yeah, it'd be nice, wouldn't it? It'd be fucking nice. Mate, I'm a lecturer and I struggle to afford to go on holiday and even camping. Exactly. A lecturer. That's a highly socially useful job. And he can't afford to go on holiday or go camping. Them lot in that village, they go down to their local lake. When it's sunny, they go and have big days out. The state actually invests some money into hosting events. They don't do that a lot here. You go somewhere and you have to pay a ton of money. But they'll go down to the lake and they'll have little like barbecue. Not little, it's great. I don't know why I'm demeaning it. It's like they'll have barbecues. People will be selling like local foods and it's amazing. The one argument as well on the left about defence is that it's one of the only ways of getting right-wingers to believe in investment into people's educations. Because you can go to the military and get an education. I think my cat's crying at me. And right-wingers go, yes. Because what they do, they go, we'll let you have it if there's a chance that you can die. I'll go check my cat. She might have fucking got her claws stuck on something. Give me 2 seconds, lad. I'll be back. What are you moaning about? What? What? You're just shouting. Candice, you crazy bitch. Oh, you crazy gorgeous cat. This is my cat, Candice. Candice, what were you just saying a minute ago? You were talking about collective ownership. Huh? Oh, you're so cute. You're going to get angry at me? There you go. Can you see her? Oh, you're so cute, Candice. You gorgeous cat. You're a gorgeous cat. They can't see. Candice, they can't. They want to see you. They think you're very cute. You know, they can't see. How come they can't see? 1 minute, Candice. Oh, I put it on a break, Candice. Alright, don't run away. You're going to run away because you're a cat, and that's what cats do. Can't stay there. There we go. Oh, she's purring. Oh, you can hear that. Some ASMR. She loves being like held. Good girl. Look at this cat. Oh, we got the other ones coming now. They're gonna have a fight now, I'm sure. Oh my god. Bro. They're gonna have a fight. This will be a fight. They're sniffing each other's faces. Cash, relax. Yeah, she's a Maine Coon. And then we got a Persian. Whoa, they're so cute. Look at these two. The fluff on that geezer. Absolutely. Ginger cat's called Bruni, and she's about to sit down. Oh, for goodness sake. I'm stuck, lads. I can't do a lot. I've been catted. Oh, she's been so sweet. This is hilarious. Ladies, I can't. Bruna's laid down on my lap, so I can't really show her. Maybe. There you go. This is hilarious. Honestly, they hate each other. And I can't believe they must have been absolutely so lonely if they're willing to do this. I've got to show this to my wife. 1 minute. Oh, she's going to laugh so much. Darling, I will come pick you up, but look what's happened. I can't do anything. I'm stuck. I've got Brew here, sat on the lap, and then Candace whilst I'm streaming. Brew's gone now. Oh, you know what's happened? Okay, so Candace's claws are now currently stuck in my jumper, and she gets really she's being super sweet right now, but she'll get very angry once she realises her cat's claws are stuck. She'll get really angry and be mad at me, and then she'll hiss at me probably. So what did I? Even if I try and fix it for her. Thanks for joining, Gavin. Can you hear this purr? I don't want. You can't. The rule about having cats is you can't put them down. They control you. They have. Oh look, she's realised her claws are stuck. Oh no, there we go. She's done. She's finished. Oh, her claws are so sharp. Okay, there we go. They run the gaff. Yeah. All right. It was their decision. You saw it. I didn't break any rules. They decided of their own volition to leave me. Okay. I'm going to go pick up my wife I'm going to get some nice coffee. I hope you all enjoyed that. I hope that was a good stream. Cats. Oh, yeah, Political X. Al's just popped in the chat. You should go check out Political X, by the way, guys. Really good channel. We'll have to get him on stream at some point soon. Yeah, I'm going to go get coffee at this nice place in Milton Keynes. We've got a couple of nice little coffee joints now. Slowly getting better. It's unfortunate, yeah. Milton Keynes is like the end game of capitalism and it sucks. But slowly, the people are fighting back. Opening some little nice coffee shops, nice local things. So, we're getting there. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the chat. I hope it was valuable. I'll upload the full conversation. Maybe I'll just leave it on stream. Maybe I'll leave it on this channel. But then I think I will do clips on my second channel rather than long form. So yeah, I'll leave it up on here. So if you missed anything, there's so many good bits in there. So yeah, nice one. I'll see you guys later. Have a good day. Bye bye.